Ladies and gentlemen, my name is
Scott.
Hey, yo. Is that his younger brother? It's gonna be
Jeff.
The cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
And you're listening to
all of the great action figures from our good friends at Hasbro.
The Fully Poseable.
Have your own WrestleMania with all your favorite figures.
Wrestling figure.
Each sold separately from LJN.
Podcast.
And we are the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Telephone 5. It's funny, I'm starting to lose track of what number I'm on, so I pause for a bit. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are enjoying these episodes, getting to know the backstory. You guys have heard me say this, blah, 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 right? But the funny thing is I've noticed as I've gone back and listened, I've asked a lot of the same questions, but the reason that I do that is because everybody has a different answer. Everybody has an answer of, oh, when I was playing figures, I was setting fire to my room, or I was having buried alive matches. And that's what's great about this. And I enjoy hearing these stories from everyone. So, and I hope you guys are too. I hope you guys aren't bored of these. But the best thing is that stories change from episode to episode. You just don't know what story is going to come up. And that's what I love. Ryan had the story of him setting fire in his room. Travis was setting off fireworks in his room for Kane's pyro. Brandon didn't even play with figures, but we still love Hova. By the way, happy birthday, big man. So guys, without further ado, let's call our very first guest.
Mr. Jeff, how are you?
Is this Michael Sugarman?
It is. How's it going?
It's going well. I love your last name, man. I gotta say, Sugarman is such a great last name.
It lends itself to many a good nickname.
What are some that people have called you?
Oh gosh, Suge Knight, Sweet and Low, Sugar Daddy, any variation of sugar you can think of, and I've probably gotten at one point.
I promise I will not call you any of those. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, and congrats on the newborn.
Thank you very much. He's made it 10 weeks today, so we're feeling like we've accomplished something, and just every day is a new adventure, but we're really excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing good up here. We actually just got extended to May 31st out here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know what Los Angeles's cutoff is, but we just got extended out to May 31st to shelter in place. So guess I'm going to be doing more of these.
Yeah, last I heard we were going to the 15th, but I feel very lucky for many reasons, one of which is I'm on parental leave until early June, so we weren't planning on going many places anyway, but this keeps us a little bit more.
Would you be working from home if you weren't doing the parental thing?
Yeah, our office is shut down and we're working remotely, so it would be staying here anyway, and I feel lucky to be able to do that.
Gotcha. So I've been waiting to talk to you, and you were like, no, got to feed the kid. You've been making me wait.
Sorry about that.
Nah, it's all good, man. I've been watching WCW Capital Combat 1990.
Oh, gosh.
And that is the one where RoboCop came out, surprisingly.
Oh, wow. That's an important one. That story, I think stands the test of time.
But you know what? Now that I look back at it, it was in the middle of a show, and it wasn't during a match. So it's okay. It's like it wasn't a big angle. They made a big deal about it. And yes, it is ridiculous that freaking RoboCop comes out, but it's not that bad. It didn't have anything to do with a match. The Horsemen were just beating down Sting, and RoboCop comes out to make the save, and then that's it. So it's not that
why
bad.
It gets such a bad rap. Like it's no different than any other like a mini celebrity appearance that going on now.
It's just the ridiculousness of it being RoboCop.
Touche.
So I have to ask, are you getting more sleep now than you did in New York?
Well, I think the answer to that is yes, and that is in part because I love my wife greatly, and one of the many reasons is when in the middle of the night when she's feeding, she lets me sleep. So for the most part, and that's enabled me to get more sleep, and we've been alternating back and forth naps and all that. So it's a different level of crazy right now, but all good. New York was quite an experience, and hopefully I'm hoping to recreate that experience next year. Hopefully everything calms down. Obviously safety first, but hopefully everything calms down and WrestleMania can stay in LA next year.
Yeah, so the backstory to Michael is Michael got to New York and he didn't stop. You were a madman getting autographs, and you could tell how ran down you were by the end of the weekend. Michael's hair was all over the place. Like, picture your average person of like running off of maybe 9 hours sleep in about 4 days. That was Michael.
It was a lot of fun, and I didn't know when I'd get to go again. Didn't know traveling for an event is just not as easy for personal reasons, and I was like, I wanted to get the most out of the experience, and it was great being at WrestleCon, meeting a bunch of people. It was the Fig Life meetup, and it was definitely an experience I will not forget. The
funny thing is Celeste and I, when Celeste and I saw you every single time, it was like you were more and more haggard, but it's in a funny way. It's in a funny context. It's not like I'm making fun of you, but literally you could see the deterioration of you throughout the weekend because of the lack of sleep that you had going on.
Well, it was like a lot of planning. Like I had saved and I wanted to get certain people, and it was by myself, so I couldn't carry everything. You have to go back and forth. You didn't know the lines, and it was it took a lot of strategizing, and when I say I made some mistakes, it wasn't like anything tragic happened, but like were I to do it again, there's things I would do differently, and but it was a lot of fun, and got to meet a lot of fun people and a lot of good memories.
Yeah, it was, man. And let's go down the list, or you don't have to name them all because I don't know if you can remember them all, but which autographs did you get?
Off the top of my head, I remember getting Mark Henry, Bob Backlund, Rhino, Christian, Trish. I think the most memorable thing for me of the day would have been being able to complete in one day the Horseman box set, the Mattel box set, and getting JJ on it. And the tragic thing was I didn't have enough cash on me to get the number of Flair autographs I wanted. And so the guy running the line said, just run to the ATM and come back. And I did. None of the ATMs were available, but long story short, I came back and Flair was cutting off his line, and I was like the last person, and I was not going to be able to get an autograph. But I looked at the guy and was like, you said I'd be fine. Like, the only reason I went was because you said, but long story, he convinced Flair to let me get his autographs. And that saved the day for me, because I would have been crushed if I had done all that and not gotten Flair's autograph. So it worked out. Didn't get everything I wanted. Wished I had gotten Steamboat that day, but I got a bunch of good stuff, and it was pretty fun.
You mentioned Steamboat. The reason I was able to get that Elite Legends Flashback Steamboat autographed was because of you. You and I were in line for Taker, or actually we were going to meet up in line for Taker, but you're like, hey, do you need Steamboat? And I'm like, yeah, dude, we can't find that series up here anywhere. And you're like, I gotcha. I was like, cool, dude, I need this. And then because you were able to help me out with that Steamboat, I was able to get that autograph in New York, and I thank you.
Happy to do it. And, I've learned so much from you, but also the sort of community that, you have helped build, and Scott has helped build, and everyone, have helped me out so much. It was the least I could do was to help you out with that. And it's very rare for me that I'm in that position, not because I don't want to, but I don't make it out as often and don't catch things as often. So when I caught that, I was like, absolutely, it was happy to do it.
Well, let's not give Scott credit. Scott's not here, so I'll take all the credit for us.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. He's not,
Yeah, he's just Scott. It's all good. I'll just pat myself on the back.
Yeah.
It's funny looking back at the New York situation that you were going through, because it got to be Sunday, and Celeste and I were trying to get tickets for Mania, and it just wasn't happening because the prices weren't coming down. And I was like, did you happen to see Michael yesterday at the meetup? And she goes, yeah. She goes, is he okay? And I'm like, Yeah, I think he's just a bit tired. And so she was like, okay, I was kind of concerned about him. And I was like, he's fine.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was an experience. Like, I don't regret it at all. I had the best time, but I was one of those people where it took, not an exaggeration, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.5 hours from when I walked out of MetLife to when I walked into the room I was staying in. So it was just a long, wet night.
Oh, are you serious? You got caught up in that?
Yeah, we couldn't get out of MetLife. We tried Uber, we tried public transit and everything. And so we eventually took public transit, but it was a long time in line. And once we got on I think the Long Island Expressway, I'm not sure the name, but anyway, once we got on that, it was relatively smooth sailing, but it took quite some time to get in that line.
I heard about the horror stories that everybody was talking about with those lines and the lack of transportation and Ubers and.
Yeah, it was cold.
I could imagine, man. So let's go back a little bit. The funny thing is we actually met through James Frank. And by the way, congratulations to James and Shannon on their newborn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I get a text message from James one night, and James says, hey, was it bar wrestling?
It was.
Yeah, bar wrestling. And there's somebody here that listens to your show. I was like, oh, that's cool. He goes, I'm telling him now that I'm texting you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, tell him thank you for listening and all this stuff. Thanks, man. Do you remember that night?
Vividly. The night started off, I'll have to find the picture and send it to you. Like, I must be, and I'm not necessarily proud, as one of the few, if only people who's brought in like a giant bag with like paint pens into a bar wrestling event, because there's this picture of me on like the bar wrestling Facebook with like my hands up being searched, and they didn't want to let me in at first. This is not a stereotype. I legitimately said, because they asked me like, are you trying to graffiti something? And I was like showing them the figures and explaining, why I had brought them. And I remember I was getting Jeff Cobb, Dashwood, and a couple other. I was trying to get Brian Cage, but he had to leave and didn't come to the tables. And there's a couple other people, and I remember seeing. I don't remember if James must have approached me, because I think I might have been wearing a fully posable shirt, but I definitely had paint pens out, and the conversation just sort of started from there. And it's weird to say to you, and it's weird because I'm just thinking my wife's going to be listening to this and just is going to think it's funny. But like, living in LA, like I don't see celebrities that often, but like it's like I wouldn't want to be bothered if I'm in a grocery store. So like if I see someone, I try to like leave them alone. Like we ran to Chris Masters in the grocery store, and I didn't say anything. And my wife's like, "You love wrestlers," like, but I just didn't want to bother him in the store. But when James told me that he knew you, I was like mesmerized, because I listened to your podcast like all the time. And like it had changed, like I was like offended now by Sharpies at that point. Like I did not want nothing to do with them. And I felt so like, I was like, this is so cool. Like, and like, it like made you like real people, whatever. And it was like even though I wasn't seeing it, was that sent it to me like the celebrity setting I cared about the most.
But the funny thing is now fast forward about a month and a half or so, Scott and I head down to Los Angeles for the Toys That Made Us. It was the night before. And James is like, hey, we got to go to Universal Studios. Let's go get dinner there. By the way, we're meeting somebody there. And I'm like, okay. So Scott and I hop in the Uber with James. We show up at Universal Studios, and you're standing right there. And it's funny because there was like no awkwardness. It was like long lost pals just meeting up. And that was the very first time we had ever met.
Yeah, I just remember being a lot of fun and being very like calm. And I don't want to say like long lost friends, because obviously we had just met, but like it was very like, no judgment. It was very like easy to talk, and with someone with similar interests, it was nice. And like I have some friends and family into wrestling, but not really that many people that are interested in collecting. And to hear like the passion that you guys have and the people you interact with, it was just really exciting to me to just to talk with people who have who share that interest and honestly know way more about it than I do, and so I'm able to learn new things that I had no idea.
Well, I've just learned that I can't remember Elite series anymore. I give up on trying to remember what series, who's in what series.
There's far too many.
Yeah, tap out on that one, man. You said you have family members. Were you able to connect with them over wrestling?
So, in sort of once you had talked to me about this, I did some sort of research just because I was sort of curious and sort of thinking. And I always tell people that one of my earliest like concrete memories, I shared a room with my brother growing up, and the lead into WrestleMania 8, where Hogan was like threatening retirement or discussing it when heading into the match with Sid. Like, I vividly remember watching that, and that's one of my earliest memories just in life. There's like scattered things here and there from before that, but like the first one where I vividly remember like what was going on was that. And my brother and I, you know, have bonded over that our entire lives, and I have friends that are interested in it. But my brother's like the person that, you know, I've talked to the most about it, and then people know, like, I don't hide it. Like, I have figures at work, I have figures at home, and there are people that are interested in. But my brother and then a couple of my groomsmen were fans, but no one was really into the collecting side.
Were you collecting when you started getting into it with the Hogan and Sid thing?
So it's funny. I actually asked my mom, because I have maybe like 5, if that, figures growing up. Like, I have a Hogan Hasbro and a Warrior Hasbro, and I honestly didn't really know what they were. I mean, I knew they were wrestling figures, but like, if you'd asked me 6 years ago, I would have had to look at the foot or wherever to know that it was a Hasbro. I knew I liked wrestling, but for whatever reason, I never really got into it. The collectibles, and my mom had just said that I just was more into other things. I feel such pain of regret now, because there's no way I can go back and recollect, you know, all the Hasbro sets and all the Jakks Classics and things like that. But if I had been consistent all along, and I've been a wrestling fan my whole life, I could like the collection I could have right now, which be like, you know, a sight to behold, at least for me. And so that's now why I go and collect like some things. Like, I really love the Jakks Classic packaging, in part for signatures. But I didn't have a lot growing up. I would say that when I got out of college and started having my own income, I started getting into collectibles. I was really into Funkos for a while. But as I got older and thought more about budgeting, I've more or less tried to limit most of my stuff to wrestling. And that's where it's really gotten, some people might say, out of control recently. But in the last couple of years, so one funny story is, you know, I met my now wife online, but when she was like looking me up and wanted to know how tall I was, there was a picture of me with Ryback. He did a signing here, and she Googled how tall Ryback was, and then saw me standing next to him. And so I guess in part I have Ryback to thank for my wedding, which is sort of funny.
That's pretty funny, man. So Ryback helped you score a date with now your wife.
He did. I next, if I ever see him again, I'm gonna be sure to thank him for that.
That is a great story. I love hearing that, man. So you had a few of the Hasbros, and then you just got kind of out of it, and then you got back into it.
Yeah, I never had like a fake fed growing up. Like that to me sounds like, I mean, I wish. And if I opened my figures, I probably would do something similar. Like Ralphie Vibes is the one who stands out to me, but there's a lot of great figure photographers. But like, I see his pictures, and that sounds like something I'd love to do. But like, when I've opened a package, usually accidentally, because the glue falls off on some of the older packaging, it just like, it pains me. And and it would be great to be able to open packaging, because like, I'm standing now where I keep my figures, and I'm like, I don't display most of them because I don't have the room. But I just can't see myself opening them. But to answer your question, I don't know exactly like what brought me into focusing on wrestling, but I think I just saw the figures, and I saw more about signings, and I wish I knew exactly how I found the podcast again, but I think I was just online on social media, and you find it, and I'm so glad I did. But I've gotten into it, and now I'm like going into scouring social media, being like, all right, which are the next sets? Like, trying to budget which ones I want, and then you know, just trying to get you know, trying to help out people when I can, trying to find help, because, you know, for a while I was able to get some of the exclusives, but I've had some, you know, run of dry luck recently, but people have been great in helping me out, and So it's just sort of striking that balance. But I don't have some people I have like rules for their collection. I'm just like, if it's probably not the best, and to my wife, if she's listening, I deny that I ever said this, but it's like if I like it, I'm sort of like picking it up and figuring it out as I go.
Mm-hmm. Trust me, man. If you would have had a collection starting at Hasbro all the way up to Jax, or now Mattel, your collection would be out in a garage in totes. Because that's where all my stuff is. That's where Scott's stuff is, because I'm only limited to a room. I do have a couple figures out I have quite a few figures out in the main room. But honestly, dude, with the collection that Scott and I have, we have totes on top of totes in 4 separate garages. Because not only were we collecting wrestling figures, we were also collecting Scott was G.I. Joe, He-Man, Star Wars, all that stuff. And then I was collecting starting lineups. Scott was too at that time. We were also collecting TV show vehicles like Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider. We were collecting all that stuff. So we have all these collections that are just sitting out in totes because we don't have the space to put it up in a house. So be lucky that you haven't been collecting that long.
Yeah. Yeah, I have all these comic books and DVDs. I'm like, I don't regret them because I love them in the moment, but I'm like, all right, I need to figure out a way to like condense and but I know the value is not there, so it's like I'm just sort of pushing it off and figuring it out later. I'm sure you've said this. I don't remember your answer. I'm sorry. Are you trying to get the whole AEW series of figures, or are you going to pick and choose which ones you want?
The first series, I'll grab all of them. The second series, I think I'm going to grab I probably will grab all of them because I do like Hangman. I do like MJF, Penta, Phoenix. I do like all those guys. And even though I'm getting the boss fight ones, I'm also going to grab the AEW Jazzwares ones. So the first 2 series as of right now, I'm grabbing all of them.
Yeah. So part of me is like, all right, like looking back at the Mattel in the first few series, like the value is, there. And like people were so interested in them. I'm not looking to resell, but like, all right, so like, worst case scenario. But the thing that saved me was when they were doing the 1 of 500, 1 of 1,000. I'm like, I know I'm not going to be able to find those. So I'm like, all right, I don't need to buy the complete set. And the completist in me is like, it's okay. Like you don't need to get every single one. Mm-hmm. I want to get some of them, but you're gonna sort of pick and choose. I got to figure out which ones I want to get. Well,
the tough thing is where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna grab all of Series 1, you're gonna grab all of Series 2, but are you gonna grab all of Series 3? It's where do you draw the line? And also, Mattel's gonna still be pumping out figures. Boss Fight's gonna be coming out. Super 7 has the New Japan. So like, there's all these figures coming out from everywhere. So it's like you've got to decide where your money's gonna go. And especially with you right now, you have a family. You, honest to God truth, you have to budget.
Yeah, my hope is, and this is why I sent in the question to Scott a week or so ago. My hope is to get eventually, he's only 2 months now, but eventually get my son into wrestling. So then it's not really spending on me; it's spending on him, and sort of work it out that way.
Yeah, so you guys are going to be having a dual collection going on, maybe.
Right. I'm curious what it's going to be like. A lot of people are watching this Last Dance documentary on Michael Jordan, and obviously every generation has things that reminisces about how things were for them. But like, I vividly remember going to the Blockbuster and like being like, oh, do they have any wrestling videos? And like the 3, I think I eventually bought them from Blockbuster: WrestleMania 4, SummerSlam '89, and WrestleMania 8. Like I remember playing those on tape over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And it was just an experience that like I remember WrestleMania 4, the VHS was 2 cassettes and just being like blown away, like how much content is on here.
Yep.
Or what have you. So it's interesting, like how, the future is going to experience things. And I definitely would say wrestling is more violent than it was then, but like that's oversimplifying the issue. Like there's not necessarily, and it's like sort of balancing that, which I know that it's just an interesting thing to think about because I want to share my interest, but I also don't necessarily want, my son watching a TLC match at 3 or 4. And no judgment on those who allow it. It's just everyone's different.
Right.
So it's a lot of interesting, decisions to come, but it's definitely want to be able to share that passion with them.
Have you and your wife decided, because you sent in the question to Scott, and I hope Scott answered it in the best way he could for you, But have you guys kind of decided on how to introduce it to him?
It's funny. I'm sure I'm not going to phrase what she said exactly right. I'm going to hear about it later. No. I think it's like we're sort of worrying about it in the future. Like I'm sure I'm going to be leaning more towards showing it to him earlier, and she's going to want to hold off. I think it honestly just depends, because I haven't watched like Main Event in a while, but I think something like that might be more appropriate in maybe skipping some of the recaps, but just focusing on sort of the matches and figuring out. I sort of want to just cross that bridge when I get there. I think that's one thing Scott said made sense, which was like when you're watching something and they sort of watch with you and join that way. Because I definitely want him to, as much as I want to share my passion with him, like I want him to find what he likes and what he wants, and not do something just because I would like him, because I want to share that interest with him. So I think it's sort of just how things see how things play out. But it's just really going to depend on, what the content is. And, I know we can't control what he watches forever, but definitely want to limit the exposure to violence, I guess, when we can. But I think, so it's a long-winded way of saying we're going to figure it out. But I think we're on the same page, because, we were all kids too, and we saw things. We just want to that things happen as naturally as possible.
So just use Scott and I as an example. We watched Dusty take a spike to the eye. We saw Ric Flair bleeding in a job match, and we came out screwed up. So just use us as an example. I don't know if that's a great example, but use us.
Screwed up at all. I was thinking of the things I wish I had learned from you earlier. So I got into collecting I've been wrestling collecting for probably 3 years ish. And one of my prized possessions is I have a signed Vader Elite. I don't remember. I think it's 31. It's one of the Mattels in the longer box. But I'm crushed because at the time I didn't really know anything about anything, and it's signed in Sharpie. So I mean, it's one of my prized possessions. He was really nice, and I had these like trading cards, and one of the cards was him and Yokozuna, and he asked me if he could have it because he, like, I guess, had a good relationship with Yoko, and it made him feel good, and so I was like happy to give him the card.
That's cool.
But I wish I had known about the Sharpie. I now have a lot of my autographs facing away from like the window, because I'm like, I don't want this to get faded.
Yeah. That does happen too. That does. By the way, I can relate to you because both my Vader autographs, the Elite Legends and the Jakks Classic, is both signed in Sharpie. The one with the Mattel Elite Legends is okay. It's an okay autograph. But the Jakks Classic actually looks better because he's signed in a silver Sharpie, and that silver hasn't faded over time. It's actually stayed up. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it, because that was before paint pens, which are a godsend.
They are. And they've gone up. The ones that you recommend have actually gone up in price. So I really think you should be getting a cut of that, because I'm pretty sure they've at least doubled in the time that I've known you. So you really should be getting a cut of that.
Are you talking about the Posca ones?
Yeah, the one on Amazon that you recommend. It was like, and this may be in part, I'm not trying to diminish your impact. This may be in part because of quarantine and harder to get supplies. But I looked the other day, I paid like 20 something when you first told me about them, and they were listed for 40. So I was like, ooh, wow. Yeah.
They've gone up in price big time, man. It was funny too, because I had just looked before WrestleCon, which was supposed to be in Florida this year. I was going to look at before WrestleCon, maybe picking up like a spare set just to be on the safe side. And then I looked and I was like, that can't be the right price. I looked on Amazon. I was like, that can't be the right price. So I went to eBay. They're selling for almost the same exact price on eBay. I was like, what is going on? I guess everybody started flooding them as we were getting close to signings.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to order some in like October and just keep them in storage for next year.
By the way, how close are you gonna be to all that?
So I'm. This is a aside, but everyone, LA gets made fun of a lot for the SNL skit, the Californians, and how traffic is. But like, that's real life. Like, I always think like, Well, it's like not that far if there's no traffic, but
right.
It's 20-ish minutes, 20-30 from the football stadium, and about 15 miles from downtown. But that could be anywhere from 20 to an hour depending on traffic. But
yep.
I told my wife, she was like, "You're on babysitting duty that week." I said, "I'll make it up to you however I need to. Just let you know."
You're already preparing her for it.
Yeah, I was like, please. I've been sort of kidding, but she's been great. Totally supportive. I've never had to, she didn't hide anything and understanding. She's not really into it, but like growing up, my favorite was always Hulk Hogan. And
mm-hmm.
I actually was able to convince her one time, like he was appearing on the West Coast, and I guess I had missed when he appeared at Frankenson's, and I didn't really know about what Frankenson's was. And he was appearing at Arizona on Martin Luther King Day, which is a holiday, so we all had it off. And I was able to convince her. We flew out to Arizona for the day, got discount flights on Southwest, and her friends happened to live out there, so I was able to swing it. We went and had dinner with her friends, and I was able to go to this Hogan signing and get his Funko. Unfortunately, signed in Sharpie because I was not smart. But she's been a great sport about that.
You've also gone to some other signings. You met Kane.
I did.
You got some great autographs out of that one.
Yeah, I got his Funko signed. I got his Hall of Champions signed. Oh gosh, and I'm now drawing a blank. But I got a third thing signed because it was a package deal. I try to make as much as I can while striking that balance between family and other things. So Frankenson's, I've been able to see Chris Jericho and Sting and Shawn Michaels. The Kane thing was a little further east. It was in Ontario, which is a little further. Is that the Dave and Buster's? I don't know if you saw the emails about there's going to be a Jim Ross signing that was canceled before the
the
fires.
Yes.
So it was at the same place at Dave and Buster's out in Ontario.
Oh, okay. My apologies. I thought that was at Frankenson's for some reason.
No, I was at. It was arranged, I think, by people who had done stuff at Frankenson's, but it was not. It was not at Frankenson's.
Oh, okay. And then, what did you get signed by Undertaker when we met in line?
So I got the 5-pack Thank You Taker purple box from Mattel, and then I got his Hall of Champions.
Okay.
Figure.
And those came out great too. By the way.
Thank you. That was. And what did you got? What did you get signed?
I got the Jack's Classic 3-pack.
That's right. Yeah. I'm trying to think about. So there's also a store out here called the Wrestling Guy store that's had a few signings. I've met Hall and Nash did a signing there,
mm-hmm.
and Sean Waldman has done a signing there. And they have had a few others do a signing there. It's been so I try to get to as many as I can. I was actually hoping to meet Lita and Dean Ambrose, but again, safety first. Because of everything going on, that event it's supposed to be next month. I think it's got pushed. There was a Comic-Con Revolution scheduled for May.
Uh-huh.
But it's tentatively scheduled for August. Although who knows what's actually gonna happen.
Right. It's funny too because if I was Nostradamus and known all this was going to be happening, I would have gone to Los Angeles for that.
Yeah.
It kills me, dude. And it's funny too because I had Brandon Hova on Telephone One, and he goes, "I had a backlog of your shows, so when I was flying to Detroit, I was listening to them all." And he goes, "And you mentioned that you skipped out on going to the Los Angeles wrestling show, Wrestle Reunion or whatever that was." And he goes, "No, don't." He goes, "Don't cancel. It's going to be your last chance." I'm like, damn it. I wish I would have gone now because there aren't going to be any signings, at least around here, for Lord knows how long.
Yeah, I remember because that was LAX Fan Fest. And
that's it.
The guy who does that, Victor, is the guy who's done a lot of the signings at Frankenson's. He's the guy who brought Undertaker in and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember joking to my wife if we could delay our son's birth until after the event, jokingly, but because it was funny that the perfect event, the dream event, was around then. But hopefully that event was successful and they'll do more. But yeah, because right now most mostly the only thing you can really do is there's companies that are doing like private signings. It's not the same, but it's like, is it better than nothing? And it's, I don't know, teach their own, but seems like that's probably the safest bet for a while.
Yeah, and hopefully next year WrestleMania is still in Los Angeles and they don't deviate from that.
Right.
As of right now, we don't know what's going on. As of right now, it's still planned for Los Angeles, but what's going to happen come next year? Is there going to be a magical vaccine? We don't know. We can't predict the future. If we were able to predict the future, I would have gone to the LAX Fan Fest, but at the same time, we just don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully it doesn't get pulled out of Los Angeles, because I'm going to be driving down there with a buttload of figures, and a buttload is a lot, by the way. It's actually a numeric ton, but I'm going to be driving down there with a bunch of figures. I get to take more than usual. And I took a lot last year, but this year I'm going to be taking quite a few, or actually I should say next year I'm going to be taking quite a few because we're driving. So we got a bigger vehicle to haul those figures down in.
And I'm ashamed to say I've never had the tacos. So I'm excited for, all of the activities that are going to be taking place.
They're right by your offices.
Yeah, I don't get out that much, I guess.
They've got to be on DoorDash or something, man.
Yeah, it's on my to-do list.
I was like, man, that's right by your offices.
I'm eager to fix that once I'm back, but
so
that's on my to-do.
Do you and your brother still have the connection of wrestling?
Yeah, we still talk about it. I don't watch as much as I used to. I mean, I still keep track, and I still record everything, but I'm usually like fast forwarding hyperspeed. So we talk about it. He'll email me when big things happen. And we tend to like the same storyline. So we'll talk about the same stuff. And, but he sort of stops with just talking about what happened on like NXT or AEW, and the collecting side, just doesn't really appeal to him.
He doesn't want to get pictures with anyone, or?
No, it'd be in my dream if I couldn't go, if he would go and do it, but that's not his thing, which unfortunate, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, because I've noticed a lot of people they go for the pictures with the wrestlers, or like us, it's the autographs. So or some people go for both, and God bless them for having that money to do that. But, but at the same time, it's like having an autograph on a figure, it just gravitates to us. Having that autograph, remembering where you were, where you met that wrestler, it's just awesome. I love having those autographs, looking at them, remembering, like for me, the confusion on Bret Hart's face, on Razor's face when he's signing the card case with the Hasbro inside. He's like, oh, I just signed Scott Hall. If I would have known this was to hold Hasbro's, he goes, I would have signed Razor. And he flips it over and signs Razor. So I have a Scott Hall on one side and Razor on the other. I think it's just memories like that I love. And having those autographs bring back a lot of those fond memories.
Yeah, I have a lot of pictures with people, but I don't really look at them that often unless they pop up for some reason, or someone asks me, like, did you meet so-and-so? But, I have the figures, and I like those. I agree. Those memories are stronger, and I usually have an attachment to what the look is. So of the figure, hence why I bought it. I definitely agree that the appeal is sort of more on the figure than anything else.
Have you had any strange interactions with wrestlers? Allegedly, have you had? I should say allegedly.
Not really. Solely my opinion. Like sometimes I've told someone like how much I appreciate them coming, or what it means to me, but I don't generally talk for too often, because I feel like they're usually like meeting a bunch of people, and I don't want to be the awkward person who won't let the other people go in line. So I haven't had too many awkward interactions. There's times where people haven't been as friendly as others, but the story that comes to mind, and actually both interactions have been positive. Like when I didn't have figures to sign of someone, I actually Brian Pillman Jr. at StarCast if he would be okay signing his dad's figure, and he was totally fine with it. And when I met Vicky and her daughter Shaw, I had them ask them to sign the Hall of Champions figure of Eddie's, and they were both very friendly about it. And I thought that would be the case based on what I'd seen online, but I tried to approach it in like, I hope this is a question to ask. I'm not trying to be rude. Like, would it be okay if you signed this one? And they were both like they're all very friendly about it. So I was pleasantly surprised about that.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things regarding Flying Brian Pillman Jr. and Vicky Guerrero. So that's cool, man. I love hearing that you've had some positive interactions with them. At StarCast, the first one, right?
Yeah, I believe it was September 2018.
So you did fly out to Chicago for that one, huh?
Yeah, I did a trip to Chicago for the weekend. I think it was Labor Day weekend, and I brought some stuff, and I went for a day. It was a lot of fun. Trying to remember I think I met Raven, and I think Alundra Blaze. I think I knew about the paint pens then, because I know she actually had a yellow one, and I remember being impressed because I think that was the color to get on her figure. Now
you went to All In too, right?
I did not.
So you just went for StarCast.
Well, we were there for the weekend, and like I got like there's like what way we worked out was like I could do one thing, and between one and the other I picked StarCast because I could watch All In.
Oh, okay.
So that was sort of my thought process. Because what did you end up getting signed there?
Oh man, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember this past StarCast. I don't remember what I took to the first StarCast. Celeste will have to probably like jog my memory, but this past StarCast I met CM Punk, Razor, Mick Foley. So
if you had like one dream person left to meet right now, who's a plausible person you could meet, is there a person that you think who would it be?
Honestly, the one person I really want to meet is Daniel Bryan, because I've gotten CM Punk checked off my bucket list, Okada checked off. Although it wasn't an autograph on a figure, I was still able to meet him.
Yeah.
And again, that's just a picture, but I got to meet Okada. And Scott and I joke about it all the time. I call him Okada, all that stuff on the show, but he's like my favorite wrestler right now. And just honestly, last person I want to meet is Daniel Bryan. He's just the last person on my bucket list. And then after that, I'm not like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Do you have someone on your list?
Yeah. Well, Dream, like, I don't see it happening, but like Dream would be The Rock, because I just big fan and all that sort of stuff. And just, I think it would be incredible. More realistic, though still hard, would be Steve Austin. He's in a similar stratosphere for me. And I know he has done some signings, but not as many. Just, as a kid who grew up in the Attitude Era, like, being able to meet some of those top stars would just be a lot of fun. I was sort of, as we were talking, I was sort of like thinking of other fun stories. Like, I had also listened to Something to Wrestle. I still enjoy it. Don't listen to it as much. But when I went to one of their live shows, I got Bruce to sign a Brother Love Jack's Classic, and Conrad signed the Akeem because of his sort of gimmick on the show. I was just sort of thinking like that's another fun like figures that I have signed that it sort of made me chuckle thinking about.
That's pretty funny. Okay, let's play the fun game of how much would Rock's autograph be if he were to ever do a signing?
I mean, he could get away with whatever he wants, but I have to think. I'm going to say $1,200.
I was thinking about $8. So it depends on how much the promoter puts the price at, because obviously the promoter has to pay the money to the booking agents and all that stuff, and then the promoter sets the price. But trying to figure out how much the Rock's autograph or picture would be. Hopefully there's a combo package that's $1,200.
Well, the only reason, because I remember seeing Stallone's autograph at some point at some event, I feel like it was like $800. And I was like, I could be making that number up. I know it was hundreds. I don't remember exactly how much. And I just remember thinking, okay, well, The Rock was the highest grossing star, I think, last year. So I don't know. But so I just threw a number out there. But yeah, I'm sure whatever it is, you get it.
Oh yeah, big time. How much was Hogan's autograph for you when you met him in Arizona?
Don't remember though. I mean, I would tell you if I want to say it was 100, but I just don't remember.
That sounds about right. He's usually about 100 to 120. And again, I don't know how people were able to afford getting a picture and an auto with him. That's $240, man. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I wish I remember. I don't know. It's just for me, like that was one thing where I was like, whatever it is, it was worth it. There are other places where I've made decisions and been like, I can't justify this, I can't justify that. But with Hogan, for me, just because having grown up, like that was my guy, it would be worth it. But that's an absolute, like, it's a personal decision on what you're willing to spend and on who. And it's tough because I think prices are, obviously only going to go up, and there's just so many more, more figures out there that you have to make calls on.
Yeah. This past WrestleCon, Mike Tyson was at it, and I was actually thinking about, because I've always wanted to meet Tyson. That was a childhood, I wouldn't say idol, but a childhood like fond memory of seeing Tyson on TV all the time. But when I called my dad, and my dad's like, "Oh my God, you'd pay that much to meet Tyson?" Oh, I think it was like $160 for a picture in an auto, I think, or I'd have to go back and check. But anyways, my dad made me feel bad, so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not gonna get Tyson's.
Yeah, I think Sting was out at Frankenson's. It was the same day Mike Tyson was signing at a sports store in, I think, Puente Hills in Southern California. And so in my head, I was like, I can do this. I can figure it out. So Sting was more important. So I went to Sting first, and I went to Tyson after. But like, he had finished his signing, but so he was in the back signing stuff for the store. So they wouldn't let me take the picture, but they brought me in the back, and I got Tyson to sign a DVD.
Which DVD?
It was one of the documentaries there was a documentary on him that was relatively inexpensive on Amazon. This was at the time where I was like more trying to trying to get more autographs, and I liked him, but I don't know if now I would do it because of the expenses we've talked about. But it seemed like I didn't go out to as many events as often, and I wasn't trying to limit my collection, so it seemed like it was a fun thing to do. But yeah, it was just a random DVD.
You sound like Scott when Scott was gonna go get Jericho's autograph at this WrestleCon in Tampa, and then immediately leave WrestleCon to head over to Hogan's Beach Shop to get Hogan's autograph.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I did the day I saw you at the Taker signing, because there was a Taker signing. I think it was then the podcast for Something to Wrestle, and I think NXT was that night.
Yes.
And it was a day.
Oh, but, yeah. Hands down. Because Celeste and I drove down the night before, got in at 2, up at 7. You and I were texting. You were already in line. I get to Frankenson's, and then you have to wait in that long line just to get his picture. Then you have to wait in that long line just to get his autograph.
Yeah.
By the time we got through all that, now I don't know, you were ahead of us in line, so I'm not sure what time you were able to get out of there. But by the time we got out of there, it was 2. And as you mentioned, the LA traffic is no joke. Trying to get from Frankenson's down to Los Angeles, where our hotel was, because we were right next to the Staples Center.
Yeah.
In that huge hotel. I forget the name of it.
I think you were at the Intercontinental, right?
Yes, the Intercontinental. Thank you. Get there, check in our car, go up, have to check in, fly back down, head over to the Staples Center, grab food, and as we're sitting down, they're starting the live show for NXT.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, what a day. Like, I was just exhausted before the show even started.
Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about with All In and StarCast. Like, look, in an ideal scenario, I could go to as much as I can, all the events, and this was a personal decision. Like, for me, for the most part, I'd rather go to the autograph part of it, because that's like a unique experience, and the whole sort of meet your heroes thing, and I can watch the show on my TV. Now, that's not to say the live shows aren't great. I love them. I love going to them. But if I really had to choose, I would probably choose the autograph, just because of that push and pull for me.
Yeah, completely understand. Michael, I want to thank you for being on. Actually, the next person I'm calling his name is Ray from Southern California. So I'm going to just call this episode like a SoCal connection or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Now he's my tag team partner. Everyone else seems to have one.
Yeah, exactly. Soda had Ryan last week. Jordan had Randy. although that's my tag team partner. You got Ray this week, so.
All right, that works. Ray, you don't know it yet, but we're tag team partners.
You guys will meet up. You're in the same vicinity, so.
That sounds good.
Michael, thank you very much. I'll be texting you, man. You know I will.
That sounds good. Thank you for having me, and on behalf of everyone, I think what Soda said is true. Like, I didn't get to be a part of the gifts you got, which is incredible, but he's right. If he had asked, I would have given whatever dollar sum he had asked for, and we all would have done it. So thank you to you and to Scott for what you do, what you've created, and for pushing this content out. We appreciate it. We're grateful, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. And from Scott and I over here, congratulations on the newborn. And
thank you very much.
We're happy for you and your family, man. We really are.
Thank you very much. Everyone's been great, and I can't wait for James Frank and our kids are taking over. So enjoy. Keep the thrones warm for them.
They're gonna be wrestling, man. They're gonna come back with broken limbs, and you're gonna be like, oh, "Were you wrestling?" All right, Michael. Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Bye.
I want to thank Michael Sugarman for being on. He is such a gentleman, and means a lot that he'd be willing to come on. But we do have to get on to our next guest. As you heard, his name is Ray. We'll be giving him a call here.
Hello?
Is this Ray?
Yes, sir, it is.
How are you doing, my kind friend?
I am great. And yourself?
I am doing good. Okay, so a little backstory. I was excited to have you on because you have such a unique story with all these wrestlers, and it always starts out with, we were drinking at the bar.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I like to have a drink or two, or three, or maybe four.
Maybe 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, sometimes when you're on these wrestling trips, the limit just doesn't exist.
You actually have to budget for alcohol.
Yeah, that's very true. I like to save, I like to save for merch and alcohol. Food falls in there somewhere, but
the best thing is this past year at StarCast when we were in line for CM Punk, and we're standing in line, and we're talking to this dude in front of us. We didn't know who he was. We just started talking to him because a lot of wrestling fans do that when they get in the line. They just start talking to the person in front or behind them. You come down, and you had been drinking the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, apparent that, you had 1 or 2 the night before. And you come down and you're like, oh, I know this guy. Like the dude that we had been talking to, you're like, oh yeah, I know this guy. I forget his name. But his
name is William.
That's right. Thank you. And you're like, oh, William, what's up, man? And I was like, dude, Ray knows everyone.
Right. Yeah. No. So the funny thing about that is that he was texting me the whole time because it took so much to just get me out of bed that Friday morning that I was like, gosh, man, I gotta get ready. I gotta go. And I couldn't find my glasses. That was the funniest part. I could not find my glasses. They were calling me Velma from Scooby Doo. Cause I couldn't find my glasses. And he's texting me the whole time, dude, I'm almost there. I'm already inside the room. And I remember I sent him a pretty explicit text. I said, dude, I'm getting ready. I'll be down there. Just in kind words, as you could imagine, just be quiet. Just stop. Like, I'll be down there. And like I told him, I appreciate, like, he had done me a solid because, whenever I'm waiting in line, yeah, dude, go ahead, jump in with me. So he wanted to return the favor. So I was like, all right, cool. Don't worry. I'll be down there. Surely enough, man, I'm like, where is he? He said he's inside. I couldn't find him. And mind you, I'm still not, I couldn't find my glasses, so I didn't have them. So when I saw him there, I was like, oh, hey, look, it's William. And then it's, Jeff and Celeste.
Yep.
So that's why I remember that the first thing that popped in my head, I was like, man, I was drunk in Vegas when he saw me on Sunday, or I was hungover, my bad. And then I'm pretty hungover Saturday morning over here again, but it's all good. It was a lot of fun.
So in Vegas, who were you partying with the night before?
So let's see. Thursday night, I had gotten very drunk with Joey Janela.
Yes.
At Papa Buck's jam session. So what it was is, I just, as you know, I live like 3 hours away from Vegas. So whenever I go, I like, as long as somebody else is driving, obviously, I just start pre-gaming. I don't care. I just, because now I just want to make one thing clear, because people think because I have a high tolerance that it's like I drink all the time. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm on vacation and it's time to have fun, I can go pretty good. So I had started pretty early that Thursday,
mm-hmm.
and I had gone with a friend. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen his username pop up on Twitter, Blaze Juan for the Nation.
Yeah.
So me and him drove up, because my girlfriend had just started school, and so she went with her and her mom drove, and they met us like later on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So I had already started, and by the time they got there, I was even more excited. And then, when you see another person that you remember from the last trip, you guys start going at it even more.
Yep.
And point is that after the show, I forgot what show it was. I know that one of them was the Owen Hart show, because I was like super drunk, and when I was asking a question, I almost started crying because my dumbass is all up in my feelings. And and I remember that I told JR and Mark Henry. Well, first I told JR, I said, "Thank you for being the voice of our youth. The voice of my childhood."
Uh-huh.
And then I asked a question about Owen, and so after that, like, it's funny because I had a flask. I had a little Batman flask
mm-hmm.
that I had been sipping from, and my friend tells me, he's like, "Dude, like, relax, like." And I'm like, dude, hey, I'm good, man. I'm good. Trust me. It's this British guy. It's funny because he's with his accent. Hey, man, relax. And yeah, that was a bad idea. I remember getting to the back to the hotel.
Oh.
I remember taking a little power nap, chugging like 2 or 3 water bottles, and I had missed like the first 20-30 minutes of Papa Buck's jam session. But then I hulked up, brother. That's what it was. I hulked up, and I went straight to that session. Me, my girlfriend, her mom, and I meet up with my friends there. And surely enough, Joey Janela is just right there, just drinking, obviously.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, well, shit. I'm asking, what does he want? And I forgot that I had a wristband for like free alcohol, and or not free alcohol, but they pay for it. Open bar. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting him stuff after, like, drink after drink, and I remember that. I said, hey, can I take a snap with you? He was like, hell yeah, man. Like, of course. Like, you've been providing alcohol all night. Of course. And the funniest thing was that when I start recording, he worked me, man. Like, I don't know who this guy is. He's just been buying me alcohol, and this freaking guy just, I was like, wow. I just, I just got played. This is totally awesome. And yeah, we were, but again, it's not just him. Obviously, there's a bunch of wrestlers that are there
mm-hmm.
getting their buzz on, and then there's the ones that don't drink, but they're still there, just chilling, having fun. So,
mm-hmm.
But that was in Vegas, and then that Friday night, I I actually took it a little easier because I knew Saturday would be a bit of a long day. But that Saturday night, I was completely I got obliterated. Me and that's when I met Mance Warner for the first time.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, that was when I met him for the first time. And again, I had that wristband, so I was getting him stuff, I was getting myself stuff, getting my girlfriend stuff, and he was like, I like you, man. You're a good guy. Little did he know, I'm getting this stuff for free, but it's okay. It didn't matter. So yeah, but that Saturday night I got very, very hammered, and this was after the show because I had been drinking throughout the day, not too heavily because I still wanted to make it through the show, and the show was awesome. I mean,
yeah.
You were there. You guys remember that's where I first met you in person.
Yeah,
we were in line.
Yeah, that was hilarious, man. Well, funny thing is you're texting me and I'm texting you. Now we have never met face to face or anything, and you're like, hey, where are you at? Well, I'm like flying in from the Bay Area, and I'm getting in there right as you're starting to text. You're like, hey, I'm jumping in the line. And so I'm running down the line looking for you. And I kind of had a visual of what you look like, but I wasn't 100% sure. But luckily you were poking your head out. You're like, hey, there you are. You're like, why are you wearing a sweatshirt? I was like, yeah. It was cold in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I got hot just looking at you. I was like, why is this guy in his hoodie, man? Like, what the heck is going on?
It was cold in the Bay Area, but the funny thing about that is the line to get into Double or Nothing wrapped around the pool parties.
Oh yeah. Well, remember, it went through the whole street, like the side of the street.
Yep.
It went from there all through the little staff areas of the hotel, and then through the pool parties, and then through the little hallway,
mm-hmm.
and then into that big crowded area. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy because it was like one big entrance, if that makes sense. But I was like, man, I don't know if I thought that through. But
the girls that were at these pool parties were wearing, basically nothing because they're going to these VIP pool parties, but they're walking through all these wrestling fans. And
right.
You could tell that they were like, just get me to the pool party quick.
Yeah, I remember that. And then I remember that there's a friend of mine that I know, not just through wrestling, but through baseball, sports, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And he had told me, hey, if you want to cut in line with me, you're good. I said, nah, you know what? I'm waiting for somebody. And as soon as I had told him that, he completely lost track of what I was saying because, like you said, girls walking through.
Uh-huh.
There was one that was wearing literally close to nothing.
Right.
And he's just staring her down, and you could tell she kind of got a little uncomfortable.
Right.
And he said, well, hey, I mean, you're asking for attention. Look at what you're wearing. You're asking for attention. And I think she got a little mad, but yeah, it was funny. It was Vegas.
She wasn't the only one wearing practically nothing. I mean,
Exactly.
There was 5-6 other groups that were just walking by, and you're like, good Lord.
They were slanging it, as you would say.
You know it, man.
They were slanging it.
The other funny thing about us is we met because not on good terms or circumstances.
Yeah.
So Scott and I went on the show, and we were questioning FTC's decision to come out with a Vince Russo figure. And one thing about Vince Russo, he's a very polarizing person. You either like him or you don't. There's no in between. You're either Jim Cornette or you're Vince Russo, So Scott and I were questioning it. We didn't really think of the business side. And when Chris put it into terms for us to understand, it made a lot of sense for FTC to do that. And it took Chris to email us to kind of put us in our place a little bit. But in the meantime, we had gotten a tweet from V Trigger's Fig. And he was like, well, I'm going to stop listening to these guys. And he's a great guy. I mean, it's all water under the bridge right now. He's awesome. I love Joshua. But he was like, well, I'm going to stop listening to these guys. And then you jumped into the tweet. And I'm like, who is Ray? I don't even know who this guy is.
Well, see, what had happened was that me and him had crossed paths, I think, on Instagram first. And then we both I talked to him. Lately, I haven't talked to him as much, but at that time, I would talk to him often, whenever he needed somebody to talk to, or even me, that I just wanted to see how he was doing. We had a nice little friendship online, and we discovered that we were both Russo fans. I think him a little more than me, but and especially at one point when I actually came out on Vince Russo's show. And so what had happened was that he heard your guys' opinion, your reaction, and he initially was just like, wait, these guys are, they're bashing Russo, they're bad mouthing this decision, and he had gone on the tweet, and I think he tagged me. I'm not sure. And the thing was that at the time, I think that's the funniest part of it all. This is actually how I started listening to your guys' show, because I had made a figure page on Instagram, and I don't know if it was that it just, fell into your guys' your explore page or what it was, but I think you started following me from the page, your page on Instagram, and so I followed back from my personal and my figure page, and I had always seen your guys your guys' post. At the time, I tried looking for your podcast, but I couldn't find it. It must have just been that I was just stupid at the time, because I don't know how I could find it. But I was always curious, because I was like, wrestling figures, interesting. And this was, before another duo had started their thing. So I was like, wait a minute, this page actually sounds very familiar. So then once I had a new podcast app and I found it, I was like, all right, let's see what these efforts are talking about, right? So I go and I listen, and all you guys could talk about is everything on a pole match. On a pole match, right? And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, all right, that was pretty stupid. I'll give him that. But they weren't he wasn't the first one to invent it. I'm like, wait a minute, what about, hey, this guy wrote for some of the biggest stars in the hottest boom period of wrestling. That was my mentality. My mentality was, these guys are, they're more so bashing the idea instead of thinking, okay, let's look at some of the positives too. It was just nothing but negatives, just from what I thought. Yeah. You guys have said it. I guess there's a fan base, for everything out there, including Russo. And so me, wrongfully, I guess I got a little too defensive about it, went on Twitter, started talking my crap. But then once I listened to the podcast, and then when the follow up, I was like, you know what? It really wasn't that bad. I think me and Josh had overreacted a little, and then it came a point where I just realized he's just not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
Much like you said, most people are Team Vince or Team Cornette.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's people that hate them both, and then there's people like me that I think it's hilarious hearing them both go on and on. Like I can listen to Cornette cut a promo on anybody just because it's hilarious. Like when he tells people that they deserve to get fried in grease, and like I think it was a Nancy Grace after Warrior had died,
mm-hmm.
and notice Jim Cornette didn't even get along with Warrior. But he stood up for the boys, right?
Yeah.
And he said Nancy Grace needs to be taken into the back of a barn house, or no, the back of a stable, to learn what it feels like to get kicked by a horse. After that, I love him going off on people.
Uh-huh.
And I know it's funny that, like, wait, you like both of them? Yeah, I mean, because the thing with Vince is that through his podcast, he's very accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And he's open to other fans talking to him, and like me and him follow each other on Twitter, and I don't agree with everything he says, much like I don't agree with everything that Cornette says,
mm-hmm.
or much like I don't agree with. Well, I mean, you can't always agree on everything with anybody,
right?
You know what I mean? And there's been times where I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I get your dislike for Meltzer, but he's not completely that bad of a guy, even though Meltzer has me blocked. And I've asked him in person, like, why'd you block me? Like, I showed him what got me blocked.
Uh-huh.
Oh, just email me out. You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. Just email me. I emailed him. I never got him blocked. Whatever. I mean, again, not everyone's cup of tea.
Right.
But yeah, it was through that whole Russo debacle that I started listening to your guys' show. And through that, I started listening every week.
Mm-hmm.
And what was cool about it was, like I said, I had seen your guys' posts in the past, like on Instagram and stuff, because I didn't really use Twitter until like late 2017. That's when I started becoming more active. But in the past, I had seen your guys' polls for like Macho Madness, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, yo, like, where can I vote for some of these things? Like, these are some interesting polls, you know what I mean? But again, I wasn't listening, so I'd forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd see it on Instagram, didn't know where to go to, so then I just wouldn't do it. But after that whole interaction on Twitter, we started following each other. We became pretty cool with each other, and whenever I was actually finding stuff, I would try and be like, hey, did you guys have this, or do you need this?
Yep.
Oh yeah, we got it. Somebody already took care of us, but thank you.
Yeah.
And it's blossomed ever since.
That's the cool thing about it is as you said, not everybody's in agree on everything. Like Jordan Cassat said last week, he goes, you guys liked FTC figures. There's no way anybody could be liking FTC figures. And we're like, look, we were Jax fans, so the FTC figures kind of resonate. They appeal to us because we were Jax fans.
Yeah.
And he's like, and when he first started listening, he's like, no, they're getting paid. And we've never been paid by FTC. That's the thing is Scott and I do have an opinion, but not everybody's going to agree with our opinion. And that's the thing is, it's how we handle it. And the thing is like the Vince Russo thing, we may not agree, but the thing is like you just said, a friendship has blossomed because of it. And
mm-hmm.
that's the thing is like, we're good friends. We text, we DM, we're waiting in line for each other at StarCast or for Double or Nothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best part, man, is like, we're not always going to agree on figures. We're not always going to agree on everything, but you know what? I'm not going to let that piss me off. There's a gazillion other things in this world that, I could probably get riled up over than wrestling figures or wrestling.
Exactly. I mean, dude, put it this way. You're a Giants fan. I'm a Dodger fan. I don't hate you.
Yeah. That's another thing. That's another thing we have, not in common, but you know what? I'm not I don't hate Dodger fans. I dislike the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm not going to let that drive a wedge between somebody that is a Dodgers fan,
exactly.
And I'm a Giants fan. That's the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I'm just glad that I don't think I've seen you in a Giants hat. I've seen you in your Bills hat. So
that's basically all I wear.
Yeah, that's a plus. That you in the Bills hat, because I don't have no beef with the Bills. Yeah, so that's cool.
you know what's funny is not many people do have beef with Bills, at least not out here on the West Coast. I've been to 49er Bills games. I've been to Raider Bills games. I've been to Arizona Cardinals and Bills games, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's the Bills." Oh, all right. It's like, oh, all right, that's the Bills. It's kind of like we don't think about it. It's like they're so focused on their division.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the interesting part, that you went to a Raiders and Bills game and you made it out alive.
It's because the Raider fans don't care about the Bills. They only care about Chiefs, Broncos, and Charger fans. And that was something interesting I've kind of found out through the Raider fans, is that they're like, yeah, we really dislike Charger, Chiefs, and Broncos fans because they're extra loud, because it's an interdivision game. Mm-hmm. But like, if the Dolphins came to town, they're just like, oh, it's the Dolphins. A lot of people go, oh, it's the Dolphins anyways, but they're like, it's the Dolphins. We don't really care about them.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense then.
Yep. So how much are you missing baseball right now?
Oh man, I've been very sad. I miss it so much that me and my friend, we went on a bold little mission on Saturday. Oh. We drove over to Dodger Stadium, and because he has a drone, and he tries to get as many cool looking things like with his drone, and he's gotten Dodger Stadium in the past, but because there's renovations now, we wanted to try and get something there. But sometimes the connection is just very, very bad. I know that they have something to like weaken drone signals, unless it's like something that they allow to be taken. So we didn't get the best shots, but we went on Saturday to do that. I miss baseball a ton. I'm a huge Dodger fan. SoCal resident, so naturally it was either the Dodgers or the Angels, but I've never been an Angel fan. I was very influenced by my older brothers, Laker fans, Dodger fans, so naturally it was passed on to me, and I've loved it ever since. And like last year I went to several games, and this year I already had several planned out, but doesn't look like any of those are going to actually take place. Yeah. Or at least if they take place, I'm not going to be attending any of them.
Right. And that's the bad part, man, is it's like once it's not there, you just like, it's like a drug fiend coming down off of a high. So you're like, you want more, you want it. Like these old games on MLB Network are not cutting it for me right now.
Yeah, it's not the same. I try to rewatch them, and it's funny because my son asked me, he's like, well, why do you rewatch wrestling matches? I said, well, the thing about wrestling matches is, like it's some matches are very exciting. Like he's been on a very big kick these last 2 or 3 weeks, ever since that Boneyard match. He's been on a very big kick with AJ Styles and Undertaker. And then because of like the style of the match and how it was like one of those what are they calling it, like a cinematic style type match,
like a movie,
yeah, like that, somehow he got turned on to Bray Wyatt and the Funhouse, whatever it was. He watched that one, but then because it was like in close relation, it also showed him what is it called? I think it was the Ultimate. Is it the Ultimate Deletion or the Final Deletion with Matt Hardy?
The one with him and Bray.
Yeah, I think it was the Final Deletion, right?
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so it put him onto that, and he watched it, and he's like, Dad, this is cool. Are there more matches like this? I said, there's a couple, but that stuff, there's not too many of those. So then what I did instead was I said, look, I'm going to show you these matches, which I showed him yesterday. We watched WrestleMania 2000, the 3-way ladder match with the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. And today we're going to watch WrestleMania 17. No. SummerSlam, the first TLC.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing was that's how I got put onto a lot of like the older matches, like with the legends and stuff, by watching. Like first it was VHS tapes. Yep. And then it transitioned into DVDs, when they were actually making them. Yep. The VHS tapes, my brothers used to record that stuff all the time. They used to record whether it was pay-per-view or Raw and Nitro. They'd be switching back and forth, and that's how I would learn. I don't know that I ever really watched too many of them live, because I just remember always watching them through the tapes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like they'd write on it what it was, what the date, and then if it was a pay-per-view, what pay-per-view it was. That's how I got into it. That like I remember that my brother's one of the first ones that I ever remember watching was WrestleMania 10 with Razor and HBK.
Yep.
And that's pretty much how HBK became my favorite wrestler, pretty much of all time. And then as time progressed, it kind of became him and Undertaker. But that's how I got put onto it because of the old wrestling tapes. And then it turned into DVDs. You know, once he started making home videos, my brothers would buy them and I would just watch those things over and over. And that's how I learned a lot of these matches. And so that's pretty much what I'm doing with him right now. Like I'm just showing, okay, if you think this was cool with Matt Hardy, just wait till you see the stupid stuff they were doing 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he asked me, he's like, isn't that stuff dangerous? I said, that's exactly why they say don't try this at home. Because, you know, nobody's supposed to be falling off a 20-foot ladder.
Yep.
You know, and you know, he watched it. He's like, that was brutal. I said, I know. So that's where we're at right now.
Tell me the joy of being able to show him these old matches. Like you're passing along your childhood to him. And now he's seeing it through his eyes, or you're watching these matches now through his eyes. Like, tell me that feeling. Like, are you just like sitting there like proud dad, just like, yeah, this is cool?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much because he really got into it. So he's 8 right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna be 9 in a couple months. He really got into it in around 2013, 14 because of the faces like that he was used to with The Rock and CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why he would just want to watch those matches on repeat. And, you know, once I started working, making my own money, I would buy like the WrestleMania DVDs and then it turned into Blu-rays. And that's what he would want to watch. And then I remember when we got him a ring for his birthday, that was it. It was over. and I remember that any figures that I would buy, I'd either have to buy him a basic or I'd have to buy duplicates just because you know how it is with kids, you know, they're smashing them all up and messing up the paint and all that stuff.
Yep. Oh,
so
yeah.
It was cool at that time, but he kind of just took a liking to other things. Like especially once CM Punk was gone and The Rock wasn't on TV or like I couldn't show him any new matches.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of just lost interest. And it wasn't until like, you know, he every now and then he has that interest. He has that intrigue, but it's not the same as it has been these last 2 weeks. And these last 2 weeks, I've really enjoyed it because especially under quarantine, after he does his work online,
mm-hmm.
All right, what do you want to watch now? And it's really cool because, you know, I get to tell him, see, this is what I was watching. I said, if you think that was cool, check this out. So right now he's on this whole thing where he hates The Undertaker because in his mind, The Undertaker buried AJ Styles alive. I said, if you think that's terrible, watch this. I showed him the Boiler Room match with Mankind.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, because I see, and as a kid, I was traumatized with that crap. So I said, so now it's your turn. And then I showed him the one with Vince McMahon in 2003. See, I knew he would like that one because even though Undertaker was, you know, beating him to a bloody pulp most of the match, in the end, The Undertaker still got buried alive. He was like, you know what? I kind of like that one. Do you have a Vince? I'm like, no, I do not. Of course I do. I'm just not going to give it to him. But it's been a lot of fun just because, you know, I didn't think he'd get back into it.
Uh-huh.
And so showing him the ones that I was interested in, because, you know, at 3-4 years old, you could show them and you can explain to them, but they're not really going to understand.
Right.
Now that he asks a lot more questions, now that he has a lot more interest, wait, so this is what you guys used to watch? You know, like, yeah, man. Why does that guy do those weird, sorry about that, those weird noises? You know, when Mankind used to like squeal or whatever the hell he was doing?
Sure do.
He was like, why does he do that? I said, Raymond, I never knew as a kid, and I still don't know as an adult. I just did it.
It's just something you can't explain, but the only answer you can answer with is it's wrestling.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's what I love about wrestling. I've said this before, man. You can do the most wicked stuff to someone in wrestling. You could set their family on fire. You can bury them alive. You can do all this stuff. But if you pin their shoulders to the mat 1, 2, 3, everything is great. That's that's what I love about wrestling. As long as you get the win over them by pinning their shoulders to the mat or making them submit, it's golden. It's over. You know, that's what I love about wrestling. And it's just pure asinine, but it's fantastic. It's poetry.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. That's the way I like to explain it to people. I mean, everyone, likes to have their opinion on it, but it's like, hey, you watch your soap operas, you watch your shows, watch wrestling.
Yep. Have you thought about showing him 1994 Royal Rumble where Taker got buried by Yokozuna?
You know what? I was thinking about that one, only because I have this it's an old DVD. I think it was like released in 2003 or 2004, and it has some of it. I think it was Taker's Deadliest Matches, something like that. And I remember when I saw that, and didn't he just? Isn't that when he appeared? Like all the guys, all the like the roster, they come out, they help out Yoko.
Yep.
And then like he pops up on the screen, and then it's like his body disappears.
Yeah, it like goes into like X-ray form, and then
exactly.
It goes up, and then I want to say somebody was playing the Undertaker, got lifted up above the screen. I want to say it was Marty Jannetty for some reason. Somebody will correct me on that, but yeah, they lifted him up, and it was so. Again, it's wrestling. It's asinine. It's great.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing was that I couldn't figure out like where like what DVD I had it on, or what pay-per-view it was. And I knew I could Google it, but I was like, nah, I want to actually try and remember. It wasn't until this past week that he was with his mom. That's when it was Royal Rumble. Yoko, there you go, boom. In fact, I think I have to ask my brother because, like I said, my brother's the one that put me up on game with a lot of this stuff. And but no, I haven't showed him that one yet. It's on the list. But the one that I did show him, what's funny with what you said right now is, as long as you pin him on the mat 1, 2, 3, all's gravy, right? Well, Here's the thing. I remember that. So 2 weeks ago when he was here, we watched Hell in a Cell with Mankind. He said it took all that to beat him. I said, it's not that it took all that, but they like it's because I'm not trying to break the kayfabe for him yet.
Yep.
As it is, Google kind of already did that when he found out that AJ Styles is still alive. So I don't want to say they were trying to steal the show, man, and they were trying to like do some crazy things, like because when I met Mick Foley last year, I said thank you because you entertained us. Like as a kid, I hated you, and as an adult, I appreciate the hell out of what you did. I respect like how you put your body on the line. Because like we just that night we said we're gonna go steal the show. We're gonna show these people something they've never seen before. And like I don't want to ruin the kayfabe aspect for him just yet. I want him to see like, hey, these guys are crazy. Like I've shown him Hell in a Cell. I've shown him he's seen the Money in the Bank. So I remember like in 2013 or 14, whenever they released that Money in the Bank Blu-ray. Oh my gosh, that kid would not stop watching the thing over and over and over again, and he loved it. He loved it every single time. And again, that was around the time that I started collecting figures more, because I had taken a bit of a break on the collecting. Never really a break on the wrestling. Like even if I didn't watch it as much, I'd keep up. Like lately, I haven't watched it as much, especially like because there's no crowd there, but I still keep up. I try to keep up with what's going on. And around that time was when I realized, okay, these figures that I'm getting, this kid's going to see them. Like, I remember, hey, do you have a Cody Rhodes? Yeah. Can I use it? Yeah, yes. And then like a Bray Wyatt when it was like the Shield versus the Wyatt family. Wait, I see your Bray Wyatt, in the box. And I was at work. Here's the thing, that I was at work when he went to my parents. I want that one. And when I get home, the box is completely ripped open. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So after that, that's where I was like, well, I guess it's a good thing that I'm not like a predominantly like mock collector, So yeah, it's been an interesting ride, especially now with him, these past couple of years.
So where did your collecting start?
So with me, I'd have to say it was around the time, like one of the very first wrestlers that I remember having. It's like one of the most awful figures. I know you guys have trashed on it. Pretty much anywhere that I've heard about it, you guys have all or anybody has trashed on it. You remember those figures that you could put water in the back, and it's like you push the button and they sweat? The Maximum Sweat figures, yeah. Yep. I remember for Christmas, I think it was like 97 or 98. I got a Shawn Michaels, was it? I think it was a Shawn or a Triple H. I don't remember. And an Undertaker. And I remember I opened it. I said, "What are these?" It's like, I don't like what? Like these aren't the cool ones. So I remember like being very, very disappointed because that's around that time was when I was watching a lot of those tapes back and forth. And then after seeing a lot of that library that my brothers had, which is probably illegal, I would watch Nitro with them. I'd watch Raw with them. What one of my brothers would do is I had like I think it was theirs actually. I feel bad sometimes because I know that I was like that bratty younger brother that wanted their toys.
Yeah.
So they had one brother had this really cool X-Men collection, and I remember what he did was he'd give those to me to play with, but I would say it didn't look anything like the wrestlers. So he did the cool big brother thing, and like he would customize them, with the I forgot what kind of painting material he had, but he'd draw like the decals, like I forgot. I think Gambit was it Scott Hall or Kevin Nash that he had drawn. I don't know how he did it, but he would like draw over these figures to try and make them the wrestlers, and that's what I would use. So that was like where I started, even though they weren't like official legit. And then once I got more into it, my dad was really the one that would like always buy the figures.
Yeah.
My mom would get the responsible stuff, and my dad would always just he'd spoil me with the toys. So he had gotten me. I think it was like we'd go to the swap meet. It's kind of, I'm pretty sure you know what these are. It's kind of like an outdoor what are those called?
Flea markets.
Flea markets. There you go. Yep. And you'd have these people that were selling those. I think they were Toy Biz, the WCW ones.
Yep.
And that's where I started. That's really where I started, because I remember getting the Goldberg, Kevin Nash. I think there was a Giant, and then there was this 2-pack that I got. It was Sting and Hollywood Hogan for Starrcade.
Oh yeah. I remember that one.
And that was one of the coolest things. I remember watching it, and I remember brothers. I think they were pissed when they saw it. I just thought it was cool to see Sting and Hollywood Hogan, right? So then when I got the figures, it was, excuse my language, but to me it was the shit. You know what I mean? Because I was like, wow, I have the figures from that match. Mm-hmm. It's funny because all these years later, I'm like, damn, they really botched the ending. But yeah, it was the coolest thing because I had them in figure form, and I remember Sting had the removable coat, and Hogan, he did this thing where like I think you squeeze the legs or you turn the thing on his back and like he'd like move his arms or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that was really where I started. But then they'd also started getting me WWF figures. I remember there was only one I think it was a Bone Cruncher, the BCA ones, right? That's what they are? Yep. Okay. It was X-Pac. It was a DX X-Pac where he came with like a locker, and he, I remember it very, very clearly. He had the tongue out, sunglasses on, bandana on, and he came with like a little locker.
Was he wearing red and white?
No. He was wearing, it was predominantly black, green, and white.
Okay. Yeah. I know that one.
Yeah. So he had gotten me that. And then I remember by that point, Toys R Us was coming out with like some of the cooler ones. Like it wasn't like the Bone Cruncher ones. I think I pretty much missed most of that. If any Bone Crunchers that I had were like, I guess, remnants from what was, when that was going out and the new ones were coming in style. Mm-hmm. I remember getting ones like there was a Rock that had like a sweat, like a shirt and the track pants. Mm-hmm. There was a very shitty Undertaker that I didn't like. To me, it just didn't look like him. There was a 2-pack of Royal Rumble figures. I think it was a Royal Rumble set from Triple H and Cactus Jack. Remember when they had the Hell in a Cell?
Yes, I think I know which one you're talking about. The thing with the BCAs is there were so many. They didn't have Series 1 BCA, Series 2 BCA. They did have that, but then they had all these sublines that just came out afterwards, and it was so tough to keep up with those. And then when you moved along, you're like, okay, we got away from the BCAs, thank God. But then they came out with some R3 techs. You're just like,
oh yeah. See the R3 techs. Yeah. Well, before I got into before the R3 techs came out, I was more into the Jax ones that like they didn't have like the shoulder joint, like the arm either moved around or whatever. Right. Some of them didn't have like the elbow joint where it bent. Like I remember very clearly there was a Triple H where he had like jeans and the long hair and no shirt. Mm-hmm. I remember when I tried and set him up to do a triple, or my bad, what's it called? Pedigree. There you go. Try to get him to do the pedigree. At least I was able to, get him to latch onto the arms. I remember that very clearly. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, it's not the best Triple H, but cool. And then that's when I found the 2-pack that my dad, again, he was the one he was spoiling me with the toys. Mm-hmm. He'd get me that. And then there was also these very, very crappy. Well, now that I look back, these very crappy, super flexible ones.
The like Flexum, like a Flexum type deal, or the Bendies? Not Bendies.
Not Bendies, but these guys were like super flexible. There was one that I got. It had, I believe it was Billy Gunn and Kane. Do you remember ever seeing those?
I probably did. Did you get them at KB Toys?
No, I remember always going to Toys R Us to get them.
Okay, so that's the thing this is the great thing about wrestling figures back in the day. When you walked into a Toys R Us or KB Toys, the aisles would be littered with wrestling figures in all these different lines. There's WrestleMania 15 BCAs or King of the Ring figures, and it was all these sublines. Then over here you would have like Bendums and Stretchums and it's just WWF. And then you go over to WCW, you have Toy Biz, and there was an abundance of figures back then that you were just like, how do you keep up with this? So if I space on a few lines, I apologize, but that's kind of what we were looking at back in the day. And I gotta say, it was awesome because the pegs were just littered with figures.
Yeah, see, and I remember the few times that I would go into KB Toys, because the KB Toys was at the mall, and we would more so just go to either Toys R Us or like a Walmart. Mm-hmm. But see, Walmart was where I'd get like the Star Wars figures. Walmart always seemed to have like the dopest Star Wars figures, mm-hmm. especially when Episode 2 had come out in 2002. Mm-hmm. That was the first one I watched, and it always had that one. And when the third one came out, they were always like super, super stocked. Uh-huh. But Toys R Us was where I'd find a lot of the wrestling figures. And I remember always I'd found it was like Big Show, Jericho. I want to say, and I remember when WCW, like before it had folded, mm-hmm. they had like brought out a bunch of old ones. And I remember getting like this really crappy looking Chris Benoit, but I thought it was cool because he had really good articulation, like with his legs and his arms to be able to do the crossface.
Yep.
By this point, he was already in WWE, but you know how that goes.
Right.
But that was like the earliest stage that I remember. It wasn't really until like the R3 figures came out that's where I remember that I really kicked it into high gear. Not that I kicked it into high gear of collecting, but I had started getting more figures, and then the R3 ones came out, and I thought those were total crap. Mm-hmm. I didn't like how super skinny they were.
Yep. I
didn't like how they just didn't like. I remember seeing a Kevin Nash that just looked really, really whack.
The legs were abysmal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And then they started coming out with Ruthless Aggression after that, the Ruthless Aggression figures, yes. The Jakks Classics, mm-hmm. and that's when they kicked it into a whole different gear.
Yep. See, that era I remember much better because so I remember that at first when I had gotten a few R3 ones, which was for Christmas. I think it was like 2002. For Christmas, I got the Hogan and Rock set. Mm-hmm. Which to this day I still have because my brother gave to me. And again, I don't like those figures. They're not great looking, but that one had some sentimental value.
Yeah.
And then I got a Kane and I got a Hardy Boys. I don't remember if they were in a 2-pack or not. I think a friend of mine, he gave them to me because he had given up collecting. Mm-hmm. And so what had happened was I didn't like them, and I was like, man, these suck. So I would just play with the ones that I had, and that was that. But then I remember one time, and I would still watch whenever I could because, as you know, the timing of it all, like like when it would come out, I'd have to be asleep already. Mm-hmm. And so I would watch whenever I could. I would still try and keep up. And then when I couldn't watch, I'd ask my brother what happened. But I remember that I went to, I think it was a Ross, and we found it was a Shawn Michaels. And what I liked about it was he had tights kind of like from before he had been hurt, before he went on that 4 or 5 year hiatus.
Yep.
And after that, I was like, wait, this looks super different. It looks so much better than that R. Well, I didn't know that it was an R3. That's what it was called. Mm-hmm. But this looks so much better than that crap that was coming out, a little while ago.
Yep.
And then once I saw that, that's it. Like, it was over. I remember that we'd go and I'd found a much better Triple H. I remember when I found Batista, that was awesome. But there was this 2-pack that I found at Walmart. It was John Cena with Kurt Angle, and it had the spinner belt. That was it. It was over. I loved it. I was in love. I was like, because you got to keep in mind. So right now I'm 27, right?
Right.
And at that point in time, John Cena was the man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember the Hollywood Hogan era. I remember the HBK era from when I was a kid, and again from the VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm.
But once I was watching live and I was able to keep up on my own, John Cena was just the man.
Yeah.
I know, I get that a lot of guys hate him. I understand that, but to me, John Cena was the man. And when I got that, like that was it. In the Fig Fed, he was winning most of the time. And then again, since they had separate rosters.
Mm-hmm. SmackDown Raw deal.
Yep, HBK was the man on Raw, and John Cena was the man on SmackDown until he came over. And yeah, there was a lot of conflict at time. There was a lot of double countouts or a lot of draws or DQ, whatever. Because I couldn't decide. Okay, my first favorite or my current favorite. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was really cool. That was a real cool time to collect, because I remember that when they started doing the classics. I remember we were traveling. I think we went to Texas. We had to go for something. I forgot what it was, but I remember we stopped by a Walmart, and I was never a fan of Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that I found the Ric Flair where it has the red robe, and it came with the World Heavyweight title.
Series 4, Series 5.
You would know better than me.
It's one of those two.
I see it, and I still have the figure to this day with the robe. I took that robe off him, and I put it on the Retrofest figure. I thought that robe was better than the Retrofest one.
Oh,
that was just my thought. But so we find it, and in my head, I'm like, you know what? This I'm not even a Ric Flair fan. I just really need that belt, because I couldn't find it. I hadn't found it just yet. I really need that belt, so that's why I got that figure. Flair was just, the cool thing was that Flair was also coming out with Triple H and Randy Orton and Batista. So I was like, okay, I have Evolution now. But Flair, to me, like, it's crazy because, I know people call Flair the GOAT and it's their favorite.
Mm-hmm.
He was never that for me. So like, I got more excited with stuff like when I found Batista and stuff, or when I found a new Kane. Like, I remember when he had like the mask before he unmasked. I remember when I found that one, or when I found American Badass, Undertaker or Brock Lesnar, stuff like that. That's the stuff that as a youngster was exciting for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So did you have to have every John Cena and every Shawn Michaels after you started collecting again?
The funniest thing is no. Because again, my dad was the one that I'd have to ask him to buy this stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
So every purchase I had to make it count. I didn't want to get like doubles or repeats. Like, I remember that there was like a John Cena that had like different shirts. I was like, man, I want it, but at the same time, I don't have a Randy Orton just yet.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I had to be very, very, very picky. And by that time, it was like the mid 2000s, and that was when they started releasing a lot of the home videos. So, and so I remember when I'd watched, I think it was the Self-Destruction of Ultimate Warrior. I was like, oh, that's who my brothers, that's who they talk about. That's who they would mention, and that's who they used to like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember after that, I was on a hunt for a Warrior. I never found one until like 2007, 2008. I went to Arizona for a family trip, and right there again at a flea market, they had the one from WrestleMania 12.
Oh,
They had him, and they had Hollywood Hogan. The Hollywood Hogan was the one that was the red and black and white. Remember when they had that one? Like,
yes.
He came with like a cloth shirt.
Yep.
And a removable belt. To me, like, that was like the coolest find I had ever had, because I found Warrior and I found Hogan. I don't remember how much my dad paid, but I know that it was well above retail. Yeah, I as much as I wanted to get multiple Cenas or multiple HBKs,
mm-hmm.
I couldn't, because, like, again, I had to make each purchase count. You know what I mean?
Yep. So did you ever do anything crazy with your Fig Fed, or like?
Absolutely. I remember when my dad got the I think it was the Elimination Chamber set. That set, looking back now, was crap. Like, it was very hard to play with. Half the time, these guys were wrestling on top of the cell or outside, which made no sense. Absolutely no sense.
Right.
Until I think it was like 2008. It was when, or no, I don't know. Shoot, I don't even remember when, like, there happened to be action outside of the cell. But
mm-hmm.
again, I was doing it long before that. I would do some crazy things. I try to, like, add different crazy stipulations where, like, there's something like you have to climb the cell, and you have to use a ladder to go above the cell, which I realized, looking back now, that was very dangerous. It was very stupid, and it made absolutely no sense. But at the time, it was awesome because I knew that I had finally gotten ladders and I had finally gotten a Elimination Chamber. My bad, that's what it was.
Uh-huh.
And I just tried to get creative with it, and that was like the cool part to it. And I remember sometimes my brothers telling me, like, you know, some would call it crazy or whatever, but we think it's cool. Like, one in particular, I think it's cool that, you know, you have your imagination, because I try and copy JR or Jerry Lawler, which sometimes wasn't the best because he'd say some really dumb shit looking back.
Yeah.
I mean, still does today, right? So what's it called? Yeah, he'd tell me though, like, it's crazy because, you know, I think at your age, I was kind of already getting out of toys, but yet, you know, you still have an imagination for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just always carried with me. And I think it was like around 2009 where I had kind of just stopped buying figures or stopped asking for them. 2008, 2009, but I never really stopped watching. Like I said earlier, I had never really like left the wrestling as an interest. It's just that I remember that I was really into DX when they came back.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they split up, you know, when Triple H got hurt, when he tore, I think it was his quad again.
Yeah.
And then they came back and they were separate. They weren't together at first. Or were they? I don't even remember at this point. But wrestling just seemed to be taking a bit of a turn. And again, I'd still pay attention. And then I had a nephew that he was really into it. So a lot of my figures, you say, go ahead and borrow it. But sometimes you don't ever see that stuff back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't really continue collecting just because, I don't know, I was just having other interests, but I never stopped watching. I remember that I always had them put away somewhere, if, you know, whichever ones were still there that I didn't give my nephew. They were always still there. And I think it wasn't until 2010 or 2011, whenever Mattel took over, that I remember when I had seen, it was Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. Initially, I just thought, wow, that was probably the best match I'd ever seen.
Right.
In terms of, you know, no gimmicks, no, you know, just one man versus the other. I thought it was the best match I had seen. And then I remember that I had seen the Defining Moments Shawn Michaels, and I was like, what the heck? Are these guys, is it a new company now? Because I wasn't privy to, oh, hey, it's a different company. It's no longer Jax doing it.
Yep.
I remember always seeing that logo, but this figure looked different. I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the ones that I was collecting.
Mm-hmm.
This thing actually looks cool. Like, it's not super bulky, and
yep.
You know, his mold doesn't look exactly the same as like a Triple H or whatever. And I found his, and I was like, okay, I don't know that I want to start buying these because it looks like a new set. It looks like a new series completely. But and I remember my brother, we had gone to Walmart, and I still wasn't working, but he said, hey, do you want it? I said, what? I felt like a kid again because, you know, wait, you're offering to buy me a toy? Yeah. Do you want it? Yeah. I took it, and it's still there. I still have it in box. That's one of the few figures that I never took out of the box.
Oh, wow. That's worth some money too, man.
I've learned. I was like, wow. Like when I see how much it's worth, I'm like, wow, I wish I would have, you know, gone after the other ones, because I didn't realize what there was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize, you know, how valuable those things were. I mean, to be honest with you though, especially like with the collection that I have now, I never buy because of the value that it has or the value that it will have.
Mm-hmm.
I buy for my own personal collection. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I remember seeing the, I think it was Ultimate Warrior and the Macho Man. And Macho Man, I had gotten a DVD of his probably like 2 years prior to that, some of his best matches.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that's I remember that match. Like, I remember watching it. That was a dope ass match.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have the money. I didn't have the funds for it. And then, you know, it's not like hey, can you guys buy me a toy? It was just weird to me. It wasn't until I started working in around 2010, late in 2010 or early 2011, that when I saw something, like I'd go to Toys R Us or I'd go to Walmart, and because of that love that I had for wrestling, you know, from a young age, or for the toys.
Yep.
I couldn't not go check the section.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing, I think it was Legends Series 2, or which one was Eddie Guerrero in?
He was in Legends, man, I want to say Legends 4, 5.
Okay, and Macho Man? Remember the one with the
purple shirt?
Yes.
That was Legends 2. Man,
Okay.
It's funny, dude. I keep saying this after 36 years of collecting, like trying to remember who was in what series is like escaping my brain quickly. You know, it's like
it's a job itself, isn't it?
Oh my God, dude. I don't know if you ever seen this, but did you ever watch Married with Children?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember the episode where Kelly was going on to a game show and they were just flooding her with information? And it got to the last question and they said, okay, this guy scored 4 touchdowns in one high school football game. And it was her own dad, but she couldn't remember because everything kept filtering out of her brain. Dude, that's the same thing with myself. Scott's memory is just insane how good his is. But with mine, it's like stuff is filtering out, you know? So it's like trying to remember who's in what set. Unless it was super memorable, I don't really remember. But going back to your original point of Macho Man and Legends, I think that was series 2, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was 2, and anybody that'll listen to this, you know, if they're still listening, because I know I've rambled on, they're probably going to be like, it's 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire screaming at the TV deal.
Exactly. I mean, it happens. It happens sometimes when I'm listening, you know, whether it's your podcast or doing the favor. It happens. But yeah, so I found that. I think I found that in like 2011. I don't even remember at this point.
It sounds about right.
What exact year? I just know that it was probably like a month or 2 before. It had to be 2011. So I found that Macho Man in 2011, and I don't even remember what other figures I saw alongside it. I just know that I saw a Macho Man that looked really awesome, that looked like he wasn't huge, like he didn't have these giant bulky arms or these giant quads. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get this. So I want to say probably like for about 2 years, I had from Mattel, I just had that Shawn Michaels and that Macho Man, which, you know, hindsight, you know, being what it is, and you realize, you know, what figures you have or had at that point.
Right.
Those are some pretty solid finds. And once like I started getting into it more and more, like I said, I always kept up with it. But once I started getting really into it when The Rock came back and he had that whole feud with Cena,
mm-hmm.
I'd go to the stores a lot more. I had my own car, had my own job. I could do my own hunting.
Yep.
You know, so it wasn't like, you know, I was going berserk or anything like that. I was only working part-time, so it's not like I was making much money, but, you know, I could afford a figure here and there. And I remember thinking, man, whoever's making this, and I realized, okay, it's Mattel, they're doing a solid job. Like I had found the Eddie Guerrero Legends at a Kmart of all places, and like some of the figures that they had there available, it's like really hard when you think back, like, man, they had a Legends Eddie, they had Papa Shango, they had Kane, like they had some solid choices.
Yeah.
But I went with the Eddie because I never had an Eddie Guerrero. That was one of the figures that I couldn't find as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Which really sucked because I had Rey Mysterio, but no Eddie. So that always sucked. And, you know, I tried to limit it here and there. And once I finally got a different job and I was able to budget a little more,
mm-hmm.
that's when it just took off. Like the collecting just really took off. In 2014, I had found figures. I think it was like I know for sure it was the WrestleMania series, like the WrestleMania 27, WrestleMania 26. That was one of that, you know, that Triple H, the one with the skull mask and the coat. That was probably like one of the dopest figures I had ever seen.
Yep.
And I wasn't able to watch that Mania live in person. Well, but I mean, it's like live on TV when it happened. But I had seen it, and I was like, man, that's one of the coolest Triple H's ever. I thought that the inclusion of Metallica and the whole Skull King gimmick, I thought that was incredible. So I had to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really when the collecting took off big time. And I remember finding I think it was Elite 30, Elite 31 Vader that seems like a lot of people didn't find.
You know what's funny is the gentleman that was on before you, his name is Michael. He also lives down in the Los Angeles area, but Michael had that same figure and he was like, yeah, I had the Vader 31. I'm like, man, I never found that up here. And then you're like, yeah, I found the Vader 31. I'm like, damn you two.
But I only found it once. To be fair, I only found it once.
Oh, okay.
You know how you always find like certain figures several times?
Yep.
Yeah, that one was one that I only saw once. And there's a collector that I met him through Instagram when I saw his username. it had the area code, that my same area code. His name's Joe Rea.
Oh yeah,
on Twitter,
yeah.
So I had come across him, and I was like, hey, I see that you have like a lot of extra figures, and then I realized that he sold some. I was like, I'd be interested in buying some, like if you're ever down for it. And he's actually been like a big help, like whenever I can't find certain figures, because I guess due to his hours, he's able to hunt like on some really good times, like whenever, like before, like when they bring like figures out onto the peg and stuff. And it's funny because like sometimes I'll mess with him, like oftentimes he finds the figures a lot quicker than I do. But there's every now and then where I beat him to it, and it's like, yeah, I found it already, and it's just it's a little inside joke, but through collecting and through the power of social media, like he's helped me out a lot. A couple other people have helped me out there local, like of course once I started going down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
You like, I remember I had made a list. Okay, I need an updated edge because the Jack's edge just wasn't going to cut it. Way too bulky. It looked nothing like, at that point, I was like, man, if I'm really going to do this, okay, what am I going to do with these Jack figures? And I didn't realize that I had a couple solid pieces in there, especially like with the Legend series. Oh, well, I gave most of them away. The only ones that I really kept were the Hollywood Hogan, the Flair, Shawn Michaels, and I think it was like a Series 1 or Series 2 Undertaker, where he didn't even have like the shoulder joint, like that ball joint.
Yeah, they placed a lot of God, what parts? R3 parts on him? The first Jack's Classic Undertaker?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. Yeah, they slapped a lot of R3 parts on him,
which made no sense to me. So, but I kept that one. There was very few Jacks that I had kept. But once I went down that rabbit hole, I was like, okay, I got to get updated ones. I got to get a new Randy Orton, obviously. A new, I wanted to keep that Triple H in box, the one from WrestleMania. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get one loose. I got to get a different one. Started going down the list of like tag teams, and then I realized, this is a very expensive hobby.
Oh yeah, it catches up to you quick, man.
Big time. It's a super expensive hobby, but it's a lot of fun, especially like when you have a list and you start checking it off. I remember when I found the American Badass Undertaker, someone said I'm willing to trade it. All I'm looking for is an Elite 35 Triple H. Remember the one with the red Skull King outfit? Like the red and gold?
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah. He said, that's all I'm looking for. If you have it, I'm willing to trade. Boom, straight up. Gotcha. Because I had found two. So, yeah, I started, checking names off the list, and it's gotten to the point where it's like now I'm just looking to buy like the newer stuff, whatever comes through. The only actual like super expensive ones that I ever spent money on were the Macho Man figures and the Ultimate Warrior figures. When I was trying to complete I like to have one of each of their elites, which is a lot.
Right.
Especially in recent years, they've just gone overboard. It's funny because I was listening to your guys' episode about the defining moments. You guys finished the defining moment series, and you guys were talking about that Ultimate Warrior,
Ultimate Maniacs one.
And I thought, man, they had so many of those warriors. Apparently, allegedly, what had happened with that, it was meant to be part of the main elite line, but I guess after Hogan had gotten into that trouble, they put him in to replace. I don't know if it was him or Jericho. I forgot, one of them two, but apparently he wasn't supposed to be a defining moment because you guys were right. It made absolutely no sense to have him as a defining moment and Macho Man was just a regular elite.
Yep, exactly.
But I went through that whole Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior thing, and I was like, man, this NWO Macho Man is very expensive. But by this point I had gotten a better job, the one I'm with now, the one that affords me all these stupid hobbies that I have. And I remember when I think I dropped like $100 on a loose NWO Macho Man, which looking back was very dumb. I could have gotten a much better deal, but I really wanted to complete the Macho Man.
We all make those mistakes somewhere down the road, man. It's not just you. You're saying that it was dumb. Trust me, there are people out there who have made way dumber decisions on figures.
Very true. And see, on the flip side, I'm actually very happy with around that same time. I think it was like one check after the other, funny enough, as Figure Fate would have it. Somebody had to get rid of their collection. They had a bit of an emergency. They were selling the Elite 16 Kevin Nash. which I had always wanted at Kevin Nash.
Whoa.
I had a Diesel,
uh-huh.
but it wasn't the same as Kevin Nash, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different gimmick, brother. Totally different gimmick.
Right.
And he sold it for like $50 mock, shipped. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna jump on that. And I remember for a while, like when he wasn't getting back to me, I was like, man, I knew that deal was too good to be true. I just got gypped. This guy got me. You know, he came off too friendly. I shouldn't have done friends and family.
Uh-huh.
Hey, brother, I'm very sorry for the delay. You know, I've been having family problems, but here's the tracking for you. That was like such a weight lifted off my shoulders, which is so minimal, you know, in hindsight. But you know, it was awesome because I finally had a mock Kevin Nash Elite 16, and there was times where I wanted to open it, but I was like, nah, that's too good of a figure to open. And then when I met him, I got it signed. And the funniest thing about that was he said, "Oh, you got the good one. A lot of people bring me other ones, but this is one of the good ones." I said, "Yeah, it's pretty expensive. Yeah, I got it on a pretty good deal."
The funny thing is you're mentioning all these figures, and right down my hallway is a bunch of figures just facing me, and I keep looking over. So, like you mentioned, the Triple H with the brown coat and the mask. That's a Toys R Us exclusive from WrestleMania 27. That's up on my wall, and I'm looking over at it. I'm like, that figure is like in my top 5 favorite figures of all time, just because of how good it is. And then you just mentioned the Kevin Nash in the red, the Outsider one. I got that hanging up right next to the Diesel that's in that same series. And I'm looking at those. I'm like, yeah, those were some good figures, man.
They really were. And the funny thing about that Diesel is I have him loose. That's the only figure of his that I can't get like a really good deal on in box. The rest of them I have them in box, like the Kevin Nash that followed the red and black, his Target Diesel, well, both Target Diesels, you know, the Hall of Fame and the Network Spotlight.
Yeah.
His Hall of Fame one, I got it signed over in Vegas last year because like when they had a flash sale. So you know what, $30, why not? Another picture. Oh well, actually, my girlfriend's mom wanted to meet him because he was on Magic Mike. So I said, check it out. I'm gonna get my figure signed. You get your picture taken. Sit on his lap. Do whatever you want. Cool. And she was like blown away. She was like, "Oh my gosh, he's so handsome in person and so big." I said, "I don't need to hear that. Thank you." Just make sure he writes, you know, Hall of Fame, Kevin Nash. Yeah, all right, I got it. Surely enough, she forgot. But my girlfriend like remembered, and because you know she was just mesmerized at the time. But that's the only one that his original Diesel is the only one that I don't have in box. But yeah, man, I remember when I started checking a lot of these names off the list, it just felt like a huge accomplishment. But the funniest thing was, like, if you ask my brothers, you're a nerd, dude. I can't believe you have all these figures. When you were 12, 13, 14, 15, okay, that's one thing. You're 27 and you have a room full of figures. Yeah, I know, but it's a lot of fun. You know what I mean?
It seems like it's more accepted now. Like
it really is.
It seems like not only with this community, but even if you go outside it, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Star Wars and Marvel Legends and DC, there's so many collectibles out there that a lot of people are like, okay, it's starting to become more accepted among people than it was in previous years, where people before would be like, you know, the 40-Year-Old Virgin movie, you know, they'd be like, oh, you keep it mint on card. What happens if I crease the, you know, you start hyperventilating. But now it seems like a lot more people are more lenient on people collecting. They're just like, oh, okay, he has a wrestling figure collection. He has Marvel Legends collection. Oh, he's got to keep them in box. Okay, that's a whole separate thing. But it seems like it's more accepted now.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is, in terms of mint and box, it wasn't until I met Joe that he'd be like, nah, I got to keep them in the box. Or another friend of mine that he likes to keep them in box. I'm like, I like having them displayed because I ended up, like, I remember when I said, okay, if I'm going to, like, go into this full on, I got to get into it. I remember I bought a shelf where I also collect Blu-rays and 4Ks, you know, the box sets and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the classics, a lot of current modern day movies and all that. But it went from one shelf of movies and like 3 for figures to where it was now. I'm like, man, I got to get another shelf. And then I'm running out of room in my wall because I've started collecting a lot in box, especially once I started meeting wrestlers and realized, yeah, it's pretty cool to, you know, get their signatures and stuff.
Yep.
once I started doing that, a lot of them are in box now, except for like, let's just say like a Macho Man or an Ultimate Warrior. Depending on which one it is, I'll open it. Like the Slim Jim one, it's not open. The WrestleMania, for me it's a lot higher than, what is it, 7?
For me it was
higher than 7.
Yeah, Scott still like kicks me in the nuts over that one, dude.
And he should. That was a great figure. The funniest thing is, whenever I would hear you guys talk about like figures of the year, the funniest thing to me is always when you guys mention Nia Jax. To me, I really don't care for that figure. I'm like, man, these guys are just they're overreacting, they're over exaggerating. The figure's cool. It's not that great. But then when you say like, oh yeah, Macho Man's a 7 for me, I'm like, this guy is tripping on acid.
You're like, I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna kick him in the nuts after Scott kicks him in the nuts.
Exactly. Or next year, for WrestleMania, I'll kick you in the nuts then, But yeah, when I had seen your list, because I think I asked you what your list was, and then I had even like mentioned like lists through the whole decade, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, this is gonna be very interesting. I wonder if we're gonna have any matching ones, and we did have a couple, but with Mattel, I just feel like they've knocked it out the park, and they've made it to where, like, man, you really got to bring your A game. Like when I saw those AEW figures, obviously the standout was the Bucks kind of had a bit of a shitty head, but the Jericho looked great, the Cody looked great, the Brandy I'm not completely sold on. Penta and whatnot, I like the way those look, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, I already do Mattel heavily. With Star Wars, I've kind of toned it down a lot, because keep in mind, I buy figures for 2. I buy figures for myself, and then I buy figures for my son. So,
right.
I'm thinking, okay, if I'm really gonna dig into the AEW line, I got to stop buying duplicates. I got to stop buying every figure just for the sake of having it. I just got to really tone it down, because I had really gotten into it pretty heavily to where I was buying figures. Like sometimes there's guys that I only like. When I found a Lince Dorado, I was like, I don't think I've seen like a full match of his, but this figure looks dope. I was like, no. It's
a fantastic figure. I mean, the Lucha House Party shirt makes it pop, but what makes it stand out even more is the mask. The mask just puts it over the top. It looks so good. But you're right. Mattel has really kind of set the bar for everyone. Like the AEW, the Boss Fight, the Super 7, they've kind of set the bar at that 6-inch scale. And I went on the show saying that I like looking at my loose shelf and looking at a different variety of scales. Like I've got these big hulking 8-inch LJNs down to these 4-inch Hasbros, but it's almost like a history of figures that I like looking at, because it's not, if everything was uniformed and they were topped off at 6-inch, unless you're Andre the Giant, 7-inch or the Giant, whatever it is, it's if you look at everything at a 6-inch scale, it gets kind of like too uniform and too redundant, I guess you could say. But
yeah, I see what you mean there.
That's why I really gravitated, and I can't afford them because I can't take on another collection, but that's why I gravitated to those DC McFarlane figures. I'm not a comic book guy, but man, I'm looking at that Superman and Batman, and they're in a 7-inch scale, and I'm like, man, these are good. But I guess I'm in the minority because a lot of people kind of got upset with McFarlane for those DC figures being in a 7-inch scale because they really wanted them in the Marvel Legends 6-inch scale. And,
yeah, they were used to that one.
Yeah, and they got accustomed to that 6-inch scale. And to me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is great. I love it, man. I love how it's in a different scale. But apparently I'm in the minority because a lot of people do not like that different, an inch difference. They're not happy with it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm in the minority with you. And I think a big part of it is because I'm not collecting them myself, because I've seen them. And I can't fall into another collection. I have so many pops and I've sold so many just to, shrink it down. I think I've limited myself to like 10 to 15 pops a year, just depending on, what they are.
Yep.
Like this year I got Tupac, Biggie, that Ricky Vaughn from Major League, and Babe Ruth.
I love that Ricky Vaughn one, man.
Absolutely. It was a must. It was a must.
Yep.
And after that, I'm really hoping I don't see any more that like I have to get, because I'm really just trying to like, keep it limited. In terms of the DC ones, another series that I would collect heavily, and I realized, nah, man, I got to tone it down. I have the essentials. I have the Batmans. I have certain Supermans. I have, Jokers, stuff like that. But I have to keep it down, especially, like with Marvel Legends.
Mm-hmm.
Those are absolutely great. The only ones that I have for myself are the X-Men ones. Just, out of like that, those were my personal favorite as a kid. In the 90s with wrestling, with Power Rangers, there was the Spider-Man, the Batman, and then the X-Men cartoon. That was like pivotal for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when Disney Plus came out, I was showing my son the cartoon. I was like, this is some real dope stuff right here. You're going to love this shit. And nah, Dad, it's really not for me. Kid, I just want to kick you sometimes.
Have you been tempted to get the Power Ranger Hasbro figures?
I've been tempted, but let me tell you why I haven't gotten them.
Uh-huh.
I went out of my way to go. I remember, I think I was late. I started collecting the Legacy figures by Wave 3. So I had to go back and pay a little extra for the Red Ranger, for the Green Ranger. Fortunately, I found the yellow and the White Ranger in stores.
Uh-huh.
But I went through enough trouble to find those that I was like, you know what? As great as these figures are, I'm not going to get them. And trust me, it has hurt me because I found the White Ranger. The White Ranger was always my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I know people love him when he was the Green Ranger. For me, the White Ranger was my favorite. And it has hurt me 3 or 4 different times that I found them in stores. I'm like, nah, man, I can't do it. I can't do it because I'm going to end up buying all of them. And then I'm going to get their villains.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. Yeah, I really want to, but I have to limit myself, And it's funny because by listening to you guys, and especially when I started listening to Doing the Favor as well,
mm-hmm.
When I heard Eric talk about how he used to like some of the older ones, but also obviously he's fallen into the Mattel, much like me, fallen into it heavily. I remember when Joe from like I said, my local friend Joe, he started collecting the Hasbros, right? And I thought to myself, I've never seen those in person until StarCast when somebody was selling them. I think I told you, remember? I was like, hey, you're going to want to go down there. They have LJNs and Hasbros down there.
Yep.
I wanted to start collecting those, but then once I saw the price points and all that stuff, I said, you know what? I can't do it because I'm going to end up spending way too much money for something I have no emotional attachment to, and I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, but I can't,
Yep.
I'm trying to save that wallet heat is what it is.
What's funny is you mentioned Joe, and I've been meaning to jump in. Joe is such a great guy. He's actually one I would love to have on and just shoot the shit with him. But I've talked to him in our interactions, not only on Facebook, but on Twitter. He's just a nice guy. And he cracks me up. I love seeing what he finds out in the wild. I love when he's like, I'm trying to get to Target before Ray does or something like that. He is a great guy. And it's such a huge asset to this community.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, he's held a huge part, in my collection. Like some of the NXT figures, a lot of the Target ones, you know how it is with the distribution, man. They're hit or miss over here.
Yeah.
And, hey, man, you still need this? Yeah, I do. All right, I got you. We'll meet up once he's out of work and I'm going into work because he works the night shift and I work the day shift. So, we'll meet up somewhere. And then just like we are right now, we'll shoot the shit just for, sometimes an hour or two,
mm-hmm.
talking about figures, talking about wrestling. It's crazy, and all because of figures. And that's the craziest part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember one time I met up with him outside of I think it was outside of a Chuck E. Cheese. Me and my girlfriend, we drove over there, and he was at a party, and she was like, are you serious? I said, yep, I am dead serious. We're outside of a Chuck E. Cheese because I am picking up a figure. I think it was a Hall of Fame Trish Stratus because I had completed all of the Hall of Fame figures.
Yeah.
He said, I was like, do you have this one? I said, you know what, that's the last one I'm missing, actually. I said, all right. He said, all right, let's make a deal. Surely enough, I got it off of him, and yeah, I had completed the Hall of Fame figures. So, and again, all through wrestling figures, it's crazy because one of the funny things that you mentioned earlier is it's so universally accepted now. Back then, it's ridiculed, it's mocked. I mean, and it still is, but now it's just more accepted. It's funny because, when I go to Target sometimes, I just got my son this giant Boba Fett Funko Pop the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just had to have it, huh? I said, technically, this one's for my son. But you best believe that if they come out with a Darth Vader, yeah, I'm going to have to have it.
I know what you mean about the Funkos. We went there right as this pandemic was happening. We went to Target, and they had a Shawn Kemp Funko. And I'm like, I don't need Shawn Kemp Funko, but why am I still holding it like I'm going to buy it? In no part of me was I ever, it was cool watching him win the dunk contest. Was it 89, 90, 88?
I think it was 89.
89?
I don't even remember at this point.
But it was cool seeing him win that dunk contest. But, I mean, like, what else did Shawn Kemp do? He wasn't like a Pippen, a Jordan, or a Chris Mullin, or, anybody else like that. I was like,
Kobe.
Kobe, and I'm like, I do not need a Shawn Kemp Funko, but I'm still walking up to the register like I'm about to buy it. Celeste goes,
so did you?
I put it down to prevent myself from buying it but dude, I went back and I was like, if that Shawn Kemp Funko is there, I'm purchasing that Shawn Kemp Funko. It was gone. Somebody had snagged it. And I was like, damn it. And I was pissed at myself because I didn't grab it.
Yeah, see, and that's yeah, I've done the same thing where I'm like, okay, if it's still here, I'll get it. If it's not, I won't get it. And
yep.
I just like how I try to get every Macho Man or Ultimate Warrior, except for like those like super rare ones that he had made for himself.
Yeah,
there's just no way.
Yeah.
What's it called? Just like how I try to get all of their releases. Like new figures that were introduced into the line, like Sting. I have every single one of his elites.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Hall, every single one of his. The ones that I can, like with Triple H and with Undertaker, I have so many of their elites, but I don't think I'll be able to complete them because I can't justify spending, a crazy amount over a figure that I don't really need. So the other day I went to Walmart and they had like 3 or 4 of the Elite 74 AJ Styles figures.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't come around to buying it. I have every single one of his elites, just like Finn Balor. I'm like, man, I don't like this lime green looking AJ. I technically have every single one of his elites. This is the last one, but I can't come around to spending $20 on another AJ that I don't even like the attire for. I'm going to put it down, and if it's still here, which is probably still going to be there because I plan on going on Wednesday, if it's still here, I'll get it. that's how you work, that's how you're just programmed.
Yep.
And I'm already like pretty much fixed. All right, there goes $20 on an AJ that I didn't need. But the OCD in me, I have to have them complete because that's what I said from the jump.
Well, I
remember when he came out. Sorry about that.
No.
When he came out, I thought it was so awesome that he had joined. I said, I'm buying this guy, every single one of this guy's elites. I wanted to do basics, I just couldn't. It was too unrealistic.
Right.
But with the elites, I have to.
Well, that's the collector mentality in us. That's this guy is my guy and AJ is your guy. Like for me, Bret Hart was my guy. I had to have everything Bret Hart. I had to have all of his figures. I kind of cut myself off on teddy bears, but I wish I would have gotten it now. They came out with a Bret Hart teddy bear back in the day. I wish I would have gotten.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, I wish I would have gotten that. I mean, it's useless merch, but I wish I would have had the Bret Hart teddy bear. But that's the thing is we made the decision that this is our guy and we are going to get every single figure. I actually thought that I was going to do that same thing with AJ. Every single elite I was going to grab. I got to about, I don't know, Elite 66 or something, and I'm like tapping out. I got to tap out on this one.
Yeah, I was when I was listening to your guys' episode on that one, I was like, man, I can't say I blame him because it was a great AJ. The only thing I would have changed on it was the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I would have, used a cloth shirt. But aside from that one, he has some really great elites. If you think about it, to me, 56 is one of my favorite ones, and then his Network Spotlight is one of my favorite ones from WrestleMania 33.
Yep, I love that one.
So, and I've wondered in my mind, okay, eventually I'm gonna meet him. Eventually I'm gonna get, God forbid anything bad happens, I'm gonna get a figure signed. Which one would I get signed? Because I have him and Finn. I have all their figures in box. So, it comes down between either 56. The Network Spotlight or 66, 67, 66, right? That's the one you were talking about right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be either one of those. And like you said, because he's our guy, he's my guy currently, mine and my son's, and it's funny because now my son's like, hey, if you ever go meet him, I want to go with you. You got it, champ. And looking back, it's funny because he regrets, like when I tell him, hey, I'm going to go meet Chris Jericho. Do you want to see if Mom will let you come with me? no, it's fine. And then after that whole little bit of the bubbly thing,
oh
I
boy,
wish I would have met him. He got a shirt and everything. He's like, I wish I would have met him. Yeah, you messed up, dude. You messed up. So
what's funny is I did meet AJ back in 2007. He was out here wrestling for Big Time Wrestling, and it's up in Newark, California, up here in the Bay Area. And he's still that young baby face, He was wrestling Frankie Kazarian that night. And, but you got to go into the ring and take a picture with him. Yeah, of course you had to pay for it. But anyways, I get into the ring. We take the picture. I'll send you the picture. I go to leave and I go, AJ, thank you for everything you do, man. You're one of the most entertaining wrestlers I've ever met. And he looks at me and he goes, if you thought I was entertaining before, wait till you see me tonight. And I'm like, dude, why are you cutting a promo right now? I was just thanking you. But that was the only time I met AJ, and I thought it was the most awkward thing ever. But still, that memory of meeting AJ, I think I got a TNA DVD signed by him, but still meeting AJ was still one of those things that sticks out in my head. Also what he said afterwards, but it's still one of those things like I met AJ Styles, especially in the TNA era, because especially in the TNA era, he was my guy. Like he is to you guys right now. That was my TNA days. I had to watch every single time AJ was on. If they came out with anything AJ, not all the t-shirts, but if they came out with anything AJ, I had to have it.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I forgot to mention that him and Samoa Joe, those were like the only two TNA figures that, in one of my many trips to Toys R Us around that time, those are like the only two TNA figures that I had. And I remember I wanted to get the Christian just because I never had a Christian, and also because he came with the NWA title.
Yep.
Not that I even knew much about it at the time. See, now, again, with research and all that stuff, with YouTube, with the network, with everything now, I know a lot more on it. And at the time, thanks again, Joe, because he hooked me up with that belt. I remember that I was like, man, this TNA or this AJ Styles figure is really cool. It's not really, on scale with my WWE one, so it's going to be really hard, but I'll get them. And to this day, I really don't know what happened. I think my nephew also, you're welcome, nephew. I believe it's in his collection. I don't even know what he did with his collection, to be honest with you, but I have righted that wrong, and I have all of his elites now. It's kind of overkill, just because after a while, it's like, man, with all his different attires, you get so many. But again, it's like he was part of what kept me entertained with wrestling, and then so was Finn. And it's crazy because as much as I've always been a WWE guy, they helped me branch out outside of WWE. And when I realized Finn Balor was part of the Bullet Club in New Japan, I'm like, what's the Bullet Club thing? Oh, it's kind of like NWO, but over there in Japan. I'm like, wait, what? Okay. So when I do the research, wait a minute, you mean NWO kind of copied, something from Japan? And I guess because you know how it goes. Oh yeah, they're ripping each other off. Well, everything kind of just rips each other off. Once I did the research, once I got interested in them, that's kind of like when I was really hooked into wrestling even more. Like the clutches were already in, and around 15, 16, and 17, like they stayed, clutched, which is what drove me to go to freaking Chicago, made me go to Vegas, and then Chicago again last year.
Yep. Well, that, and it's also a party for you. I mean, you always have a good time when you go on those trips.
That's what was actually going to drive me to finally go to WrestleMania this year.
I know. I was so looking forward to seeing you too, because like you were going to come to the meetup. I was looking forward to hanging out with you. This whole Tampa trip was just going to be fun from beginning to end. And it wasn't because of WrestleMania. It was because of all the friends that I was going to be hanging around with, all the people that I was going to be meeting for the first time, friends that I've seen before that I get to hang out with again. I was looking forward to Tampa, and then we all know what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and it really sucks because the only reason that I had agreed to go was one of my main contacts, one of my main plugs that I get to know a couple inside things sometimes. He, somebody that I hung out with a lot during All Out weekend, said, "Hey, how do you guys feel about going to Tampa?" I said, "You're out of your mind. I'm not thinking about going to Tampa." This was the night of the Royal Rumble, like this year's Royal Rumble. I said, "You're out of your mind. I'm not going over there." He said, "Why not?" I don't know. I never put any thought into it. Okay, well, what if I were to sweeten the deal for you? Can't go into details exactly, what that meant, but pretty much, if you've seen The Godfather, he made an offer that I really couldn't refuse. It would have been too stupid of me to pass up.
Uh-huh.
So then I said, okay, I'll get the time off approved, work on the airfare and all that stuff, figure out stuff like WrestleCon and access, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, cool. And I was pretty much on board. It was a group of about 5 or 6 of us that we were on board. One friend, he had already actually purchased his plane ticket, and I hadn't yet. I don't even remember why I didn't pull the trigger on it, but I was just waiting. The time was already approved. I was just waiting. And then I think it was probably like early March,
mm-hmm.
where they started saying, yeah, this might just get scrapped.
Yep.
And I said, hey, so what do you suggest? Should I still? He said, you know what? Just wait. And it was scrapped. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks out. I don't even remember,
yeah,
exactly, but
yeah, it was about 3 weeks out.
Mm-hmm. And once I seen that, I was like, man, it really sucked because I was actually already excited, like the idea of going because, come on, anybody that's a fan of wrestling, anybody that's a fan that's grown up a fan, who doesn't want to go to a WrestleMania?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, if it's not at the top of your list, it's up there.
Right.
Things to do as a fan, and especially after I had gone on a couple wrestling trips, I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm down. It might be a little more expensive on this one, but it's going to be worth it. And it really sucks because it was taken away from us, and especially over something that nobody could control.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm just hoping that people listen. I'm hoping that people do what they have to do, so that way we can have it here next year. As far as we know,
yeah.
They're saying that it might happen still, but it took a legit Mania experience away from us. I forgot the listener's name, but he said something. I like a real WrestleMania. It's not that it was bad, but
right.
We're used to the whole spectacle and stuff, and it took that away from us. And I'm really hoping that we can get back on track. And at WrestleMania 12, I couldn't be there. Obviously, I was a kid. There was no way I could have pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
Even though on VHS, that shit was awesome. WrestleMania 21, the same thing. Couldn't be there, but now that I'm able to, I would love to be there, and I hope it happens. We'll get some of those tacos you always talk about.
Chica's Tacos, yep.
There you go, and have that Fig Life meetup, man. I really do look forward to it because because of Twitter, I've gotten to know a couple people on there,
mm-hmm.
from the Fig Life. Not too many. Unless it's somebody that I know, with Joe. Me and Joe, it's more than just figures. We'll just be sending, especially because we have complete opposite tastes on sports in terms of teams.
Uh-huh.
So, he's always shitting on me. I don't shit on him too much because, I don't mind the Yankees. The Magic are an afterthought. And then the Eagles, I'm a Cowboy fan. He's an Eagle fan. So it's okay, that's probably the only one. But, I look forward to meeting people from the Fig Life. Much like you and I have, shot the shit. And I don't even know how much time has elapsed because I haven't even looked at my phone.
That's all good.
But I hope. I hope so.
It's all good.
I really hope to have that, with people from the Fig Life because it just seems like an awesome thing. That's one of the big things that I was really looking forward to. So
mm-hmm.
hopefully, people listen. We can get this thing under control, and next year here in SoCal, we'll have it.
And get hella tacos from Chica's Tacos.
Yeah, tacos and beer are a great combination. So you can have your what do you have? Pedialyte?
Pedialyte for I got to keep my electrolytes up,
There you go. So you can have your Pedialyte tacos,
I look forward to it.
Absolutely, man.
Ray, I better get going, man. I want to thank you for being on, man. And it's always a pleasure catching up with you. It's I hadn't talked to you since last September at All Out. And it's we text, we DM, but it's man, I haven't talked to you in a while. It's so good catching up with you. And
absolutely.
So I'll love to have you back on, tell more stories about other wrestlers you've met that you've gotten drunk with.
Oh yeah, there's a few. There's that, and then there's always the funny interactions at meet and greets.
Oh, those are the best. Those are the best with you.
Absolutely.
But
just
Ray,
real quick. One last thing.
Yep.
Just because he's your favorite wrestler, Bret Hart.
Yeah.
When I met him, I didn't have the shirt just yet of his. Now I have an awesome Hart Foundation one.
Mm-hmm.
I took a Mike Tyson one. He was like, well, goddamn, pal. Now, why'd you wear that one? I said, I knew you were a fan. I love the shirt. And, and he talked to me just because of that alone. He talked to me a little more than like the person before, the person after. We talked about the Owen match, the Owen and the Shawn Michaels match. He seems very bitter, but he was a very nice person, and all because of a Mike Tyson shirt. I just wanted to say that.
There's something about Tyson that gets him talking. There is something about Tyson, because you mentioned that to me last year. And then I was talking to another gentleman who met him down at Frankenson's. And he was like, yeah, dude, I wore a Mike Tyson shirt. And I was like, wait a second. Let me guess. He started talking to you, and he goes, yeah, he started talking to me about Tyson. I'm like, what is it about Tyson shirts that gets Brett talking?
Well, these guys, just think about it. Their glory days were in the 90s, so Mike Tyson, he was very, very prominent, late 80s into the 90s. And that's literally why I took my Mike Tyson shirt. Because I know he's a fan. I know I've heard him and Undertaker talking about Mike Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're gonna love it. And surely enough, well, goddamn, pal, how'd you know I was a fan of Tyson? Type of thing. I was like, dude, who doesn't love Mike Tyson? And he was wearing a Mike Tyson shirt himself. He was wearing like a green one. I was wearing like a black one. It says Brooklyn on it. I love it, and that's what started the conversation. It was awesome.
I was telling
needed you to know that.
I was telling Michael before I called you. Tyson was one that I was gonna get an autograph and a picture with at WrestleCon this past year. But then I told my dad, and my dad's like, "Oh my God, you're gonna pay that much for Tyson?" I can't remember how much Tyson was. And my dad's like, "Oh my God, you're gonna pay that much to meet Mike Tyson? Son, I would not pay that." My dad is a huge boxing fan. He loved Ali. He loved Foreman. He loved Tyson. But I told him that Tyson was going to be at WrestleCon, and I was thinking about getting an autograph and a picture, and he's like, "Oh my God, son, why would you do that?"
Yeah, I think it was like 150, wasn't it? 130, 150?
130, 150 in that price range. My dad about had a heart attack right there, man, talking about those prices.
I completely agree. But here's the thing. I had no idea when I would have another chance to meet Mike Tyson.
Yep.
So trust me, in my opinion, it would have been totally worth it, because that's Mike Tyson.
Thank you for justifying it for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, your dad's not wrong, because I still remember when I was very, very close to meeting Undertaker. And again, thank you, Joe, for making me feel like I made the right choice, because he kind of told me, like, I kind of regret meeting him. It's very quick.
Yeah.
I didn't even get to talk to him. He didn't sign my item where I wanted him to sign it.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad. I would have met him had WWE not pulled him from StarCast, because I kind of knew the price point at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. I'll meet him someday, and if I don't, I'm totally okay with it. I'll continue to, mess with my kid about the Undertaker.
Did Joe meet him at Frankenson's?
He did.
Okay, so Joe and I were there. I want to meet that guy.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. You'll enjoy talking with him.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. All right, Ray, I'm gonna get going, man. You have yourself a wonderful night, and actually, I'll just be texting you.
Sounds good, man. You take it easy. You guys stay safe. Make sure you wash your hands, cover your face, and keep doing the finger poke of doom.
Yes, please keep doing that finger poke of doom. Thanks a lot, Ray, for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank Michael Sugarman, and I want to thank Ray for being on. I know it's looking down at the counter. It's going to probably be about 2.5 hours, but you know what? I love talking to both those guys. Ray and Michael are just two great guys that I don't even mind that it's 2.5 hours, because I had fun talking to them. And I hope you guys had fun listening, hearing those stories with Ray and Michael at their autograph signings. So as Ray said, hope you guys are staying safe. #FigLife. Adios.
Yeah. FullyPoseable. Let's go. Jeff and Scott, the Toon Brothers, busting out the ring, but we don't take it out the box. MOC. Happy toy hunting. We'll see you next week. We're the OGs of WFP. FullyPoseable, thank you all for listening. It ain't no storyline, real life siblings. So everybody go and do your toy spotting. #FigLife, adios from the Kings.